Hi, this is Dale Lear, designer of TRS-80 Color Baseball, and you're listening to CoCoTALK.
This is CoCoTALK, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy Color computer. It's time to drop your socks, grab your real-time clocks, and let's rock.
CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world, keeping the Tandy flame alive. We may be mocked, but we'll never stop, cause CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world.
Welcome to CoCoTALK, episode 266. More and more and more CoCo!
CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world, keeping the Tandy flame alive. We may be mocked, but we'll never stop, cause CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
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 You know,
You want to handle introductions today, Mark, since I totally missed it last week?
Okay. Well, I got a prompt now. So let's see who we got today. We start off in the upper corner, Mark Overhoser.
hey, glad to be here.
And yours truly, the streamer. Not so much of a backup anymore, am I?
Nope.
Next over, Ron Delvo.
Hey, rocking the 8-bit/16-bit world.
Yep.
Like AC/DC.
Like 6809.
Oh. Next
the-
over, Rick Euland.
How's it going, everyone? Anyone want to help solder?
I just want to point out that it says CoCoTALK Game On Challenge Live. It says
On
last
YouTube?
on
Yes.
YouTube.
Yeah, it wasn't
Oh.
updated from last time.
Gee, nobody updated it.
Mistake number one.
So we're just gonna play games today. All right.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm not needed. See you guys later.
So- all right, let's see. Carriage return, line feed. L. Curtis Boyle. Man
Welcome
with
to the show,
news.
everyone.
Next over, we got Paul Shoemaker.
2 weeks in a row. Hey, everybody.
Wow. We're
All right.
blessed.
That means you're our special guest now.
Yeah, it's special something.
And next over is Fred Provancha.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, making my once a quarter performance appearance, I guess. Just decided to hop in.
Do we have an Andark 3 update?
It's on hold until control panel's done. So, yeah.
Priorities.
All right. And then the man with the game, Ken Waters.
Hello, everybody.
I would have introduced him as the man with the cabin myself, but okay.
Yes, that looks like a very nice cabin. Jealous. Let's see. Next row, Jason Reichard.
Hello. Mark, I think you're more like a permanent guest host now.
All right.
He's
a
permanent something.
It's almost like somebody just bailed and left it to you.
left me holding the bag. It's like he got away and left me with a bag of cash, you know? Yeah.
At least it's a good looking bag.
I have a bag here.
Yep, you have a bag.
I don't know what's in it, but there's a bag.
Hopefully it's a sandwich from Sarah.
It's definitely not that.
All right. Over on the other side of the world, we got Simon Jonassen.
Hey, guys. Hey, Simon.
So this is proof that the world is flat. It's light over there as it is over here.
Yeah, it's 7:05 p.m.
All right. Next over, we got James Diffendifer.
Hello. 2 weeks in a row, even.
Wow. And last but not least, we have Exile in Paradise. Alan.
Howdy, everyone. Alan.
Okay, that's the introductions.
Okay, good night.
All right. What do we got next?
Well, since we have a couple of special guests on from opposite sides of the planet, and we had a really good game on live stream, I think we should go into that. So we can talk to the author of the game, talk to the author of the upcoming NC10 version of the game. And we've also got Ken, who helped host it and played the game quite a bit too. So Ken, do you want to kind of take this segment and talk about the game on challenge? And we'll talk with Paul and Simon about the game itself.
Oh, the pressure. Okay, I think I can do this.
I call it delegating, but go ahead.
Do we have a results video?
Yes, we do. So let me go ahead and run all that.
Welcome everybody to this week's CoCoTALK Game On Challenge of the Week results video. This week we played Ghost Rush. We had a total of 28 players. We had Stephanie with 140, Roger with 360, Exile in Paradise 400. Tied for 24th place we had Mark B and Morgan Donaghy with 430. Sabhead with 450, David Craker 490. Tied for 20th place we had David Ladd and Canadian Retro Things with 500, L. Curtis Boyle 550, Grant B 570, AJ 580, Ed Rhodes 620. And tied for 14th place we had Sydney Shoemaker and Margot with 640. C. Duras 680, Sean Shoemaker 690, Jim Rye 700. Tied for 9th place we had Timbo Tech and Louis with 750. Then we had a three-way tie for 6th place with Paul Shoemaker, Brian Walsh, and Tasman with 760. Mr. Dave 6309, 820. Tied for 3rd place, we had Rich N and Brendan Donaghy with 870. 8 Bits in the Basement, 890. And the number one score this week was Buck Owens with 1150.
That's a good score.
Thanks everybody that played, and we will see you next week.
CoCoTALK salutes Buck Owens.
Okay.
Ken, is that a record for the number of participants we've had in the game?
It is not. 31 was the highest on Moon Patrol. 30 was second place on Zaxxon, and this was 3rd place.
Okay.
3.
Still a great turnout. Wow.
Excellent.
Especially considering it's a brand new game nobody played before.
Yeah. So a lot of people wanted to try it.
A lot of Shoemakers on the list there too.
Yeah, I padded it a little bit. I'd have gotten 2 more if I'd have known.
There was a couple of families that submitted scores, or groups of friends that all played, from Timbo Tech, 8 Bits in the Basement, and the Shoemakers, and
this has got to be a record for the number of ties.
Yes.
Definitely that.
Definitely
So,
a
Paul,
record for the.
Paul, does this meet your expectations of your game?
Well, frankly, it's exceeded my expectations. Not the game itself, but the reaction to the game and the kind words that I've heard and the number of people playing is just been great.
Cool.
And
I think
AJ
a lot
never
of the-
did get to 600.
No, she didn't get to 600, but she beat me and she beat Curtis, so She's going to be really happy that she beat Curtis, I think.
It's not that hard. I'm not that good.
As long as I beat Curtis.
What do you mean, Curtis? This was a one-button game. If
Yeah,
there was ever
it was
a
too
game
simple
made,
for me. That's why I did so bad.
I'm
if there
too
was
smart
ever
for
a
this
game
test.
made,
Yeah.
if there's ever a game made for you to be able to eat your supper while you're playing it, it was this one.
Or drink a beer, or it's
That was
what I
AJ's,
forgot to do.
that
I
was
think.
AJ's. Drink a glass of wine while playing Ghost Rush.
Yeah.
Let's see pompous Curtis again.
Isn't that me all the time?
That was good.
Is this one best played with the deluxe joystick or the original joystick?
For me,
I think
it's
the
an
original because the
joystick.
Switch seems to last longer than on the deluxe. The deluxe is a bit mushy on the buttons.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
it's just got one big red button on it, right? I can't get it quite in frame, but
It's also
perfect.
known as the Black Beauty.
Yep.
Okay.
How about the pistol
Yeah.
grip joystick? Huh? Let's see. How
Yeah,
you could
on the
whack it.
MC10,
That would
on the
work.
MC10, you don't get the choice. You just got space bar.
Nope, just the
Hey,
space bar.
Fred, you got a CoCo in that aquarium?
No, I have a pet snake actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
is it a viper?
Oh no, he's a Kenyan sand boa, and he's only about maybe just over a foot long. He's pretty small.
Cool.
I can take him out and show you if you want.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's okay.
No, Fred, don't take your snake out.
That's what I said
Crap,
to
I
her
walked into that
yesterday.
one, didn't I?
And there we go.
Boy, those rails didn't last long.
All right, goodbye, everybody.
Fred, I take back my question.
So for everybody, obviously this game was new to everyone here. Paul programmed it as he mentioned last week in basically 2 weeks, a couple of bug fixes here and there. So basically, I think 3 weeks start to finish, really. So basically, none of us had played it before. So what was everybody's impression of the game that took part in the challenge? Or just tried it on their own and didn't take part in the challenge, for that matter?
Addictive and frustrating.
I agree. I likened it to Flappy Bird myself, but not as frustrating as that was.
No, not nearly as frustrating as that. I could play it for longer than 3 seconds.
It's kind of fine until you get Pac-Man coming in.
Yeah, that makes it much more hard.
Yeah.
You get cornered pretty quick.
Easy to get cornered.
It never gets to the point where there's 2 Pac-Mans coming at you, like a Mrs. Pac and a regular Pac at the same time, does it?
Not at the same time. They alternate. So that adds the dimension of having to keep track of is the next Pac-Man going to come from the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen, which does add another dimension into how you have to kind of keep track of multiple things. But there's only ever maximum 2 enemies coming at you at any given time.
And have we decided on an official name for the falling piece yet? Because we've had multiple theories as to what exactly that is.
I think we decided it was teeth. Now I can't remember actually.
The fake plastic vampire teeth.
Yeah, I think we decided it was teeth.
Yeah, because the other options, it was one of the computer dip chips that Curtis took out of a motherboard and just mangled all the pins on.
Yes. It is, of course, spikes, but teeth, mangled IC chip. It's okay. It's all good.
And of course,
They
we
all
had some
kill you.
special guests on the show too. Tim Linder and AJ actually came on live a couple of times to play it. So, and then they had friends over they were doing a going away part, and they sucked them into playing it too. So,
yep.
Yeah, and then they all started to get their drink on, so I think they bailed.
Well, they came back on after you did.
Yeah,
Actually.
right after
they?
you left, they came back on again. Because, AJ really wanted to get that 600 score.
Good for her.
So they just abandoned their friends who they're having a going away party
And,
for.
and didn't Tim have a bug report to submit or something? Didn't he say something about fix your game, Paul, or something? Didn't he? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, probably.
That's kind of his theme these days. He says that about every game. I think it's just because he sucks at them. But
I think it was only his copy that managed to stop recognizing the dot.
yeah, that's right. Because he would kept passing over and it would never pick it up. That's right.
Yeah, and so it's possible he had an earlier release, because as we talked about last week, I released an updated version of that, like 3 versions within, I don't know, 4 hours or something. I need to get more patient. I need to get better at hanging on to something for a minute and trying it, make sure it works.
Yeah. Beta testing is a hard part of doing anything, especially when you got an intermittent bug.
Of course, it works perfectly when I'm playing it, but I I'm playing it in just a certain way, and somebody else does it a little bit different.
Don't feel bad. Modern game systems, they ship stuff with bugs all the time and then have rolling patches. So
they actually pretty well plan it that way. I think it's. Here's our
at least it doesn't require megabytes and gigabytes and almost terabytes of download.
It does have the benefit. Yeah, it does have the benefit of being a fast download.
Oh, it said Jim Rye said he was the one that had the stuck dot.
Oh, that's right. It was Jim.
Somebody should make a game that, it's called Patches, and everybody has to contribute to making it work.
There was a software company that did that for the CoCo back in the day. I'm trying to remember the name of the company. Because actually they had this advertisement in Rainbow that had a bunch of spiders and bugs crawling around. And the whole theme of this company was you would write a program that has bugs. You'd send the tape in with your buggy program. And they'd have these other people that were sharing too. And you basically send the tapes to everybody else and they would try to fix your bugs. And that was the whole premise behind the company.
Well, that's pretty cool.
I think we mentioned this on another episode, and nobody knew anybody that actually sent.
Well, they only lasted about a year in the early 80s, like 82, 83. So that's probably why, unless you were around at that time, you wouldn't even know they existed, type thing.
Well, after the bugs got fixed, the game was probably boring.
Yeah, they were supposed to start selling it commercially and everybody would kind of share. The people that had fixed the bugs and the original program would share a bit of the profits, but I've never saw them advertise a finished game programs. It was an interesting concept. I mean, back in the early 80s, that was the wild west of home computers where people were trying every weird idea that they could throw at a wall type thing. So
yeah, if we can't actually write a game, we'll get you to write a game and then we'll have somebody else debug it for you and then we'll market it.
That was crowdsourcing before crowdsourcing. I mean, that's an idea way
ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Don't forget there was Scratch and Sniff too, wasn't there?
Yeah, Rainbow had that in their July 84 issue.
Yeah, so it's not all good. Yeah, good point.
That was that actually was fun.
I never did play that.
I did play that too, because you just say you picked up something on the ground, scratch box number 5 to figure out what it is. Smells like pine needles, and you needed that later on in the adventure game to do something. Unfortunately, the smells do wear away.
Now all those smells are in a 50-year-old book that smell like cat poop.
Well, the smells themselves, once you scratch them, the scents only lasted maybe a month or two, really. And then after that, you didn't smell anyway. It would have been a good COVID test early on, too.
You had to buy updated smell cards.
As far as I know, Rainbow never sold updated ones, but yeah, Rainbow was kind of one of those, on the breaking edge too. They did that record, the July 1983 issue, that little flexi disc with 3 programs on it. And next year after that, they had the Scratch and Sniff adventure game.
Innovation.
Anyway, back to the game at hand.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're talking about Ghost Rush.
So Ken, do you want to kind of talk about the live stream? Because I think that was one of our busiest live streams too, wasn't it?
All right, it was. We tied for our best live stream. If let's see here, where am I? There we go. Just share that. So we had up to 9 players playing at a time. And yeah, so I think everybody was having a lot of fun, especially the time that Tim and AJ were on. They really livened it up. And then David Ladd also really added to the
yes, he did.
Livening it up.
Listen, the worst thing was they didn't do it at the same time, which is what I was hoping for.
I'm not a game player, but I must say, when I turned this on and was able to change the background color over and over again, I didn't get any further. That was fun.
Cycling through the color changes.
Simple mind, simple pleasures.
That's right, buddy.
Well, you didn't have to rage quit.
No. I got stuck on black and white and thought, wow, that's cool.
I like the black and white palette myself too.
Yeah.
Dude.
I'm a fan of the artifacting one myself, because that's just it looks like a CoCo 1 and 2 game. Like
I like taking the RGB palettes and then switching it over to composite and seeing what they look like.
Yeah, it's
I ended up with a pink screen for a while.
Yeah, it's a real treat for the eyes.
Who did the colorful one down at the bottom there?
That one is actually was actually a preview of the 16 color version of Ghost Rush, which is I finished yesterday actually. So I was playing it for a while and I was playing it like something could kill me, but there's actually the collision detection in that version wasn't working yet. So I could just spun around and just kept collecting dots. But
now, is that 16 color? Is that going to be both CoCo VGA for CoCo 1 and 2 and CoCo 3?
Eventually. I wrote it first for the CoCo 3. And so right now it's just CoCo 3, but switching it to work on under CoCo VGA should be really easy. I mean, theoretically, the only thing that will be different is just how to initialize the 16 color version, but everything else ought to be the same.
Cool.
I might have to move the where I put the high res screen.
And how's the hit detection in the 16 color one?
It's much better. So the collision detection in the original, like the 4-color version, is really only checking 1 byte at 1 row. Does it does 2 rows of bytes collide? And since each byte is actually 4 pixels wide, it's a reasonably wide surface that it's checking for. But that explains why occasionally, especially like down at the bottom, you might be able to sneak underneath a Pac-Man once in a while where you think you ought not to have been able to, because you just go underneath the row where it happens to be detecting. On the sides and towards the top, it's not quite so noticeable. When I wrote the 16 color version, of course, in the 16 color version, 1 byte is only 2 pixels wide. And so the detection, that method of detection just totally didn't work. I mean, I was like half the time it didn't detect that I had just run right through the spikes or right through a Pac-Man. So I ended up having to write a whole new collision detection subroutine, actually kind of doing it the right way, where each sprite, I basically have a hit box, which is a smaller rectangle within the sprite, and it actually checks to see if the 2 sprite hitch boxes, overlap on any of the 4 edges. So it works, but it's not nearly as forgiving. So the 16 color version, if you hit something, you hit it.
Another thing I was stuck on is watching that little guy in the middle, his eyes go back and forth, and he'd go to the one side and then to the other side, and then he would move and shake and he'd go to the other
Every
side.
time one of the fruit shakes.
Yeah.
He looks over at it.
Every time one of the fruits wiggle, he looks over, and once in a while he'll just look right straight ahead. I just thought that would add a little bit of attract to the game. Yeah.
It's because the fruit are haunted, isn't it?
They're haunted. They move.
I can't wait to play the game.
One day you'll get past the title screen, Ron.
Ron thought it was part of the demo scene, I
think. And Ron, it's only 1 button, so it's going to be really easy to figure out.
Awesome.
Now, you were mentioning that you might move the screen in memory. Are you going to try to get it to fit in 16K? Because right now it needs 32, and it's just because you kind of arbitrarily picked a higher address to put the screen.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to relocate the high res screen in the CoCo version. Now, when we start talking to Simon about the MC10 version here, you'll learn that he had to move it. He had to move it because it can only be in one place on the MC10. You can't relocate it like you can in a CoCo. But I don't really see any particular reason to try to make it work on a 16K color computer. I mean,
there aren't a lot of them out there.
Yeah, and anybody
at least not that people don't get upgraded anyway.
That was my thinking.
And a lot of people play on emulators that you can just set to whatever memory you want.
Totally.
Yeah.
For fun, I pick up my 16K machine and bring it out and see what it'll play on it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I could write it for Ron, I guess.
Yay!
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned to you when we were talking about it.
But can you get past the title screen?
Yeah, with Ron, you only have to have the title screen. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's much smaller.
Put that into 16K.
You're just about to but a lot of people that pick up CoCos on eBay, 16K is the one affordable model left. So a lot of people get that, and then they have to hunt around to find an upgrade, especially if they're new to the CoCo. So sometimes it can take a while. And some of the people that have upgraded machines that are regular guests now or have their own channels started that way. And like I used to get requests, like 8-Bits in the Basement actually said, what games work on a CoCo 2 with 16K and just keyboard? Because that's all I got, type thing. So for about a month, that's all he had. So I had to give him a list of games. So if the game's easily made into 16K, I probably would do it. But if it's like borderline, it might not work because obviously the MC10 will have 20K with the RAM expansion. So
yeah, it should work. It would work, but it was just happened to be the way that I wrote the game. It wouldn't be easy for me to move the high res screen down because I stupidly, like hard coded everything. I'm not using the screen variable as pervasively as I should. So a lot of the graphics are hard coded, just knowing where the high res screen is, as opposed to just being able to, change one variable, within the thing. I'd have to like rewrite a lot of it.
Okay. Now, before we get to Simon on the MC10 port, which is currently a work in progress, do you want to give us an update on the Dragon port that Paris Roth helped you with?
Oh yeah, so Pear helped me figure out what I needed to change and how to, really how to get the Dragon version out there, because I had managed, as we talked a little bit about last week, I had managed to figure out what I needed to change in the CoCo version to make it work on a Dragon version. And once I figured out the relatively few number of things that I had to modify, it worked perfectly. But then I don't have any idea how to make a Dragon virtual disk, or I don't even really know how to make a cartridge or anything like that. And so he was very helpful in helping me create, take the code, the binary, and put it into a medium that the Dragon folks could use. And it's been posted out on Facebook and out on
World of
Dragon. Yes, thank you, Curtis, for that. And then Curtis, you were telling me this morning that it's been downloaded a number of times already, which is also great to hear.
Yeah, 12 times combined as of yesterday night on cassette and disc versions, because a pair made both versions of those. And you even got a comment from one of the people. Let me bring that up here. I wish I could remember the guy's full name, because I do know it. I just couldn't remember it off the top of my head. He calls himself Rob CFG, Rob Config on the Dragon forums. And so that's great news. Great news. Really nicely done game and quite an interesting gameplay concept. Kudos to Paul for creating the game and Pear for porting it. So got some compliments ready. And that's a guy from Stockholm, Sweden.
See, it's a worldwide phenomenon, this Ghost Rush. It's just amazing.
And also, just so you know, Mr. Dave 6309 turned it into a cartridge game.
He did. And he told me how he did it. And so I actually have a cartridge version of it plugged in. It's that red one right behind me.
Okay.
So it is kind of neat that way. But now I need to reburn the ROM on that, because of course I'm up to version 1.4 or something on the original release, and that's got like 1.2 or something. I don't know what version it has on there.
Also, a comment from 60, Karen, the creator of XWare, on the chat here, says maybe too much faff to backtrack in 16K eyes it, but maybe in future start off with things being 16K friendly, so that if things stay that way, you've just magically got a game that more machines can play. But don't fret too much if you blow through the barrier, which I think is good advice.
Totally. I mean, and everything that I do, or I mess up, or where I do something wrong, I learn something to avoid to do in the next. And so, I was chatting with Simon. Simon and I have been chatting almost daily for the last couple of weeks, at least or so, as he's been working on the MC10 port. And he, of course, gives me all his nuggets of wisdom as he does for everybody. But one of the things that I realized in talking with him is that I could, in the future, especially if I write a game that I know is an MC10 is capable of running, and especially a Dragon, I kind of know exactly I know more about what to avoid and how to write it from the start, such that it will be very easier to portable. Because really, I mean, you can write to some degree, you can write kind of to the lowest common denominator, and it still works really, really well. And then it's just copy paste almost.
Paul, have you noticed any one machine running it faster than another?
Yeah, it's it actually runs the smoothest on a CoCo 3 at its faster speed. Now, since it's all frame locked, I don't know if that's the right term, since I'm using VSync to trigger the screen updates, it actually runs the same speed on a CoCo 1 or a CoCo 2 or CoCo 3. Now it actually runs slower on the Dragon because of the PAL 50 hertz versus 60 hertz, but it feels smoother on the CoCo 3 run than it does on a CoCo 2. Not a lot, but to me at least, I can feel a little bit more smoothness because the back end, all the back end calculating and everything that is happening right as it goes to do the screen update, that's already done on the CoCo 3, and I think it takes just a beat longer on the CoCo 2.
So you're using the Hitachi chip too on the No,
I'm not doing anything that takes any
6309
stuff.
Okay. Well, since you mentioned the MC10, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. That's the next thing for me to try to figure out is how to optimize for 6309. I know Curtis and Nick, who joined us as well. I'm sure that you guys will help me out when I run into questions on that.
Oh, it's easy. Just turn native mode on. It's one instruction. You're done.
Sweet.
So then you're going to you'll turn on the game and then it's over.
Not if you're VSync.
Yeah, that fast.
The demo will run smoother. The fruit will bounce.
Well, you're
smoother,
only
Ron.
going to the title screen, Ron.
That's what I'm saying.
Anyway, since Simon's actually here, I thought we'd get him to talk about his porting and some of the things he's hit, and him and Paul have been talking about here and porting it to the MC10. Obviously, one of the biggest differences, the graphics are pretty well the same, except where it gets mapped, obviously, but the sound has to be done quite a bit differently because there's only 1-bit sound on the MC10. So, Simon, if you want to discuss how your port's going and some of the stuff that you have to change from the CoCo, so people that aren't that familiar with the MC10 have a bit of an idea what porting is like.
I just said to Paul that it doesn't need to be slow on the Dragon 32 because it's PAL. It doesn't need to be slow. You need to change the edge on the VSync. You need to change the edge on the VSync.
Oh.
You mean trailing versus?
Yeah. It's different from the Dragon.
I'll do that.
Another new version.
Yep.
Some of the hacks.
Some of
the hacks we did with some of the hacks I did with Paris Rat, where we're doing like 24 colors in P mode 3 using power artifacts, which is just adjacent scan lines. It will work, but it will work differently because of the timing. There's slightly different timing on a PAL version, but if you change the edge, it will be a lot faster.
Okay.
Because on the PAL version, you've actually got more scan lines. You've got 312 scan lines contra 262 on the NTSC. Of course, you've got the 50-60 hertz, but that doesn't really come into play there. So, yeah, but change the edge and it probably run a lot faster.
Okay, I'll do that. See that? Every day, every day I talk to Simon, he tells me something. I learn something new.
So, but MC10, yeah, the graphics are pretty much the same. They are the same, but like Paul said,
except you can't double buffer, if I understand correctly, right?
Yeah, no. Well, no, Paul's not double buffering at all. Paul's
I know he's not, but I mean, that's one difference with MC10. You can't move the screen elsewhere.
Well, you can with one of those. You can with one of those.
Is that the MCX 32 or is that the 128?
32. You can, but double buffer with that, right? But Paul's not double buffering at all. He's just got a back buffer somewhere that is being copied onto the screen. So it's literally single framed, but it's not single framed, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, he's kind of timing the drawing during the VSync or V blank so that it's
exactly
chasing the beam, basically.
Yeah, and well, the MC10 doesn't suffer from tearing, not majorly so, because it's like the CPU and the VDG are interlaced some weird wacky way, so it doesn't really suffer from tearing. But what I have done is for the VSync is actually take advantage of the free running timer. I've not got an IRQ going on. I've got a free running timer where I just reset the timer and I check, okay, have you done 57 cycles of 262 scan lines? Have you got to that value? Yes. So you've done what would be the timing of a VSync. Just to get the timing correct.
Yeah. But you're polling it as opposed to triggering an IRQ.
Yes, it's polling because the funny thing about the MC10 is the IRQ vectors live on the screen.
Yeah, because actually that was one of the things they always had, that little setup where you'd have to move that, where you're changing the color set mode to line up where the VSync was and then have the timer based on that because you had no way to actually do it in hardware to know exactly where a VSync was occurring. You could time it to a VSync, the same timing, but you wouldn't know where the trigger was.
Yeah, well, there's actually the VSync pin is actually not connected. The VSync pin itself is actually not connected on the VDG on the MC10.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why they did that.
And A7, which is why you can only get like 4K out of a 6K screen, even if you've got a 16K RAM expansion. A7 on the VDG is not connected either. So it's like, what the hell were you thinking?
Save 2 cents on solder though.
And then they got it wrong, and then they had to piggyback a chip inside.
So I guess, Simon, if you can talk about the sound routine, because that's, like I said, the biggest difference. The CoCo and the Dragons have 6-bit DACs, while the MC10 just has a 1-bit sound source. So I'm imagining for multi-voice, which you're supporting, it's a fair bit different for doing that on the MC10.
Yes, it is. You have to kind of interlace pin pulse, because it's literally a pin pulse. I'm using the same frequency tables, but again, it's a square wave because again, it's just 0, 1. So it will always be a square wave. So it's a question of the duration of the square wave for the frequency. So you can't really control the amplitude of that unless you get really funky, which I might do afterwards. But you have to like kind of say, okay, look at this table of notes, and I've got like, because I don't know if Paul told you, he's got a 4-voice routine in there, which he obtained from Rick Adams. It's a 4-voice routine, but he's only using 2 voices out of the 4, which fits perfectly for the MC10, because I have done MC10 2-voice music before. But it's basically interlacing the sound. So you have, okay, we've got, if you think about sound as a cumulative oscillation, you're adding a value to itself, continuously, given a basal frequency. And it will trip a carry bit when you need to trip the 1 bit. So what you have to do is make it kind of like mutually exclusive. So, okay, I've got 1 voice going. Am I tripping the 2nd voice at the same time? And you have to find out, okay, have I got like 1 0 1 1 0 1 0 0 to make it kind of mutually exclusive. So it lags a tiny bit, but you don't hear it because it catches up straight away. Because the next addition will not trip a carry bit on one of the voices. It's kind of funky.
Well, it's like the old Apple II Plus, because that also had 1-bit sound. I mean, they were doing the same types of things where they were, trying to do multi-voice or, speech synthesis and stuff like that. And obviously it sounds coarser than a Dragon or a CoCo would do, but it did a pretty remarkable job. And you've actually put up a video we'll be covering in the news here that actually has the sound routine playing. Obviously you have no control over volume with 1-bit sound, but you can definitely hear the multi-voice coming through fine.
Yeah, it's 2 voices, but for me, it's a little bit harsh. I can probably control the volume, but it's going to take a little bit more work. And like I said to Paul, what I'm going to do first is just port the game, get it working, and then I can pretty it up.
Yeah,
then I can put makeup on it. So, but conversion. My God, the 6803. It's a funky little CPU. It's not even a CPU, it's a microcontroller.
Yeah. It's got some features the 6809 doesn't have, like the programmable timers and stuff like that. But on the other hand, it doesn't have the register set and all the modes that we're used to.
Registers.
Well, it's got more than the 6800 had. So.
Well, no, it doesn't. It's got the same registers as 6800. It's just got some more instructions than the 6800. But it's basically the same thing.
So is the Arduino version coming next?
I could do Raspberry Pi version. So, but yeah, I mean, it's 6803. You have, like Curtis said, you've got a complete lack of registers. The only thing you've got is the S register, which is the stack. You've got an X, which is your index, and you've got A and B combined to D, which are your accumulators, and that's all you've got. You know, and stuff like on a 6809, you can have with the X register or Y register or U register or even S, you can have offsets like 156, X or 156, Y, but those can both be positive and negative.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on a 6803, it's only positive. You can go 0 to 255 on the X register. So Where'd you go from that?
Self-modifying code.
Yes, but I mean, Paul had some stuff where he was like going past the 256 byte boundary. So what I did was just LDAB 128 ABX. So I'm just adding
it twice.
I'm adding 256 to it, and then I just 0,x, this, x, that, x. And the lack of the Y register, well, you can abuse the stack by pushing it into the routine, and then you can just pull stuff off of the stack, like pull A, pull B, pull X. So yeah, if you think about it, you can get past it.
Yeah. Well, people did the 6502, which is even more primitive than the 6800 or 6803. You had to do that all the time.
I'd hate to do that on a 6502, so that much. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the code is the same. I'm just having to accommodate for offsets and again the screen location. And Paul was very helpful with sending me tables that had been put at the location I needed for the MC10. So it's like, you saved me a job. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. I figured it was the least I could do. It took me like an hour to figure out how to translate it from 7,200 to 4,000, different, because of just the way I coded it. So I felt like it was the least I could do, Simon.
But yeah, I'm pretty much halfway through right now. I've got about, what was it? I showed you a screenshot, didn't I, Paul? I've got about 10 subroutines to take yet. And we should be good to go. So I've been on it for a week. So by next week's segment, it should be ported to the MC10.
Great.
Cool.
That's awesome. There is a lot of unrolled loops and compiled sprites in this game. And so it's just a lot of, okay, Simon's doing a lot of how do I modify this and how do I change that? And a bunch of ABXs, because I wrote it, as I was explaining last time, I didn't write it with making the code small and compact and elegant, right? It's brute force speed. I have a lot of redundant code because it's similar, but maybe very similar to other pieces, but it's dedicated to that sprite and that particular function, which is why, it's a relatively simple game, and it takes 12K in the four color version, and it takes 17K in the 16 color version, mostly because of the takes twice as much space for all the graphics in the 16 color version. But it's he's rewriting it and modifying it, and he's making it better as he's going along. So wouldn't surprise me if the MC10 version actually runs a little bit better than the CoCo version.
Tis what it is. I mean, it's a good challenge.
And this has got to be the fastest cross-platform within the CoCo community, going from the CoCo to the Dragon to the MC10 that we've ever seen a game production go. Usually it's years between versions when they get converted. So this is happening in the span of weeks.
It's amazing.
So speaking of porting, and thank you very much for being on, Simon. If it is ready for next week, would you be available to come talk about the final release next week, or 2 weeks, depending on how long it takes?
Yes, I would.
And Paul will have you on to discuss that as well, if that's possible. But Paul, I want to talk, because you've got Paris Red, who helped you with the Dragon one, is also helping you now with the Dragon version of Poker Squares.
Yeah,
I'm wondering how that one's a bit more complicated, obviously. So I just wanted to see how that's going.
Like, I don't know how he did that, honestly, because Poker Squares is this convoluted, heinous mix of basic and assembly language subroutines, where each subroutine has its own USR call in the basic code. And I never sent him the listings. I didn't send him the .sm files or anything like that. Somehow that guy's a wizard. Somehow he got in there, and I guess at using a hexadecimal, I don't know how he did it. He went in and actually, hex editor. He went in and actually modified the code so that it would work on a Dragon. And I I can't imagine how he figured that out, but he did. And he sent it back to me on it. It totally works. It's a Dragon version on a Dragon virtual disk. The only reason, Curtis, I haven't uploaded it yet and shared it, with the rest with the Dragon community, is I want to change the title screen, because I actually do have a Poker Squares title screen that says Dragon Edition on the bottom, because once upon a time I had intended to actually try to figure it out myself, and I just never did. So I just need to go in and change the title screen so that the Dragon version of the game actually says the Dragon Edition down at the bottom instead.
Actually, the Dragon logo on there too.
And with the little logos and everything. Thinking that was really creative, by the way, and I found out like every Dragon game has the little Dragon logos on it. That's okay.
So it sounds like that one's pretty close to getting released now too, which is cool.
Yeah. I just honestly, I've been spending all of my free time working on the 16 color version of Ghost Rush that I just haven't had the time to work on it. So I would imagine I'll have it, do that small thing here this weekend maybe and have it ready, have it out there by next week's show.
Yeah. And actually talking about the Dragon version, an interesting quirk showed up that Pear discovered and Sixie got involved, Karen from Xware. And he actually posted about here in the chat. He says, I did see that Para hit the delightful Dragon 32 versus Dragon 64 thing, where the syntax of USR changed between them. Technically a bug fix for the D64, but a stupid one to implement because it broke all the old software. And that's where the Dragon 32, I think, required a double digit with a leading 0 for the USR numbered function.
That's right.
And the Dragon 64 fixed it, so it was back to single digit like the CoCo Microsoft Basic does. So,
which seems weird to me, because if I'm not mistaken, you can only have USR 0 through USR 9.
Yeah,
right.
True.
And so there's never a double. I mean, you couldn't do a 10 or an 11 or a 12.
But you had to put 00 through 09 to get it to work in the Dragon 32, which of course then everybody coded for that. And then when the Dragon 64 came out, they fixed it, which now broke all the old software because it was all double digits. So that's what they hit.
Yeah, and so what Per and I were running into is because he made all of those changes, and then I went and tried to run it on an emulator, just I want to see how this works, and it didn't work. It crashed every time it did a USR call that had double digits. It crashed, and so I sent it back to him. I was like, it's not working for me. And he swore up and down, no, this is the right way to do it. And he's not wrong, of course, but depending on which
Dragon you have,
it depends even on which emulator you're running and which version of the ROM files you're running. Because if I run the single digit version on, I don't know, an older version of XROAR with, I guess, the older ROM files or whatever, it works fine. It doesn't matter. So, but on the online one, maybe it doesn't work. I don't know. It is a bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like he's got a way to solve it. He just does a check for which version of the ROM you're running. And then he just has two versions of the game, a game 32 and a 64 version, and basically it does the correct USR call, so it kind of fixes it.
Here again, the dude wrote a second version of the game to make sure that it worked on all Dragon. I mean, it's amazing.
With no source.
With no source, yeah.
Yeah, Perret is a bit of a wizard. Yes, he's an old engineer. He's a retired engineer, and he's a really good guy once you get to know him.
Yeah, we had him on our Dragon Talk special, like he had to pre-record it because he was actually away, and I think there was some other things going on in his life at that particular time. He couldn't make it live. I still want to get him on for a full-blown interview at some time. So
his English is not that good. He's kind of.
It's okay. I mean, when he did a pre-recording, and I've talked to him a couple times, like live, and it's not bad. It's takes a bit to get used to, but it's not bad.
His written English is a lot better, but he can stutter a bit, and it has to be expected. I mean, the guy's a retired engineer from Spain, and he's probably not really talked anything but Spanish.
Yeah.
So,
but he's the one doing all the AGD stuff. He just released a new pack of those. We'll be getting to that in the Game On News here shortly. So he's a machine, kind of like Jim Gary.
Paul, by the way. When you want to port it to the CoCo VGA, just let me know, because I can help you with the setup and the palette and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Because I've got the routines laying about, because I've got a CoCo VGA. I played about with it, so you don't need to worry about.
It'd be interesting to compare your two, because I think Paul, you actually did do a CoCo VGA version of Poker Squares too, didn't you?
I did, and I probably over-engineered the approach to turning on the modes with the CoCo VGA too. So I would be very interested in seeing what you have, Simon, because I bet it's much simpler.
It's probably a little bit leaner.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Anyway, so a big thank you to Paul and Simon for being on here and talking about some technical details. I know that's not something we normally do on the Game On Challenge segment, but it was kind of on topic. And also for giving us updates on all the different ports that are coming out. Sounds like all of them are progressing pretty well. And to get back onto the regular Game On Challenge, I was wondering, anybody have any tips or tricks or anything like that for the game itself?
Don't die.
I have one for Ron. If you actually hit the joystick button, you can start playing the game instead of just watching the track screen demo.
I don't bother with that, Ron.
If you watch it, try to stay towards the top, because the falling stuff gives you more time to get away from that. That was something I noticed.
Yeah, and that's counterintuitive.
That's exactly the right thing to do.
Also notice that most of the teeth, whatever you want to call them, fall down on the right hand side.
Yeah, Simon noticed it has a bias to the right side. It's not on purpose. I don't know why it does.
Your random isn't quite random.
It's not quite random. It's right side random.
And once the Pac-Man shows up, be very careful about the lower right-hand corner, because it's so easy to get trapped.
Yeah, that's the trap zone.
That's the death zone for sure. Yeah. Yeah, trying to reset yourself up to the top. Think about when you get the dot swinging back up towards the top, that typically when the spikes teeth drop from the top, you have enough time to get out of the way. Even if they're right above you when they appear, you usually slide out of the way fast enough. And that usually keeps you out of where the Pac-Man is likely to come.
Yeah, and as I was mentioning, that's so counterintuitive, because you figure if I'm at the bottom, I'd have more time to react.
Yeah, you would figure hanging around in the bottom right is the best place to be, because that's the furthest point from both. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't run away from something that's falling at you.
That's right.
Yeah. Any other tips or tricks for anybody that played it here?
You can make it a statistics type numbers game by running it in XROAR and turning off the rate limiting and just holding the button down and mashing it as fast as you can. You can play I think I did 500 games in 15 minutes or less at one point. I was trying to get some screenshots for Paul, and I'm like, I just need to do this a bunch. Rate limiting off. Here we go. Smash the button, smash the button, smash the button. And I actually was able to get some pretty respectable scores just doing random. I think I got better doing that than the actual score that I submitted for the game this week.
Well, my fingers would cramp up long before I got to play that long.
Now you just have to build an auto-fire circuit, that's all.
And sometimes if you just, when the game starts, if you just go clockwise, and just let it go. Bloop, 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 bloop. You can get about 8 or 10 pills before you get hit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes it's just the luck of the draw. I think I've gotten up to 140 points before, just not touching it, just letting it go.
My kind of game.
There you is. It's even easier, Ron.
There you go, Ron. Just turn it on and
just
watch
have to
it
press
play.
the button once. Yeah.
Wow.
This game was designed for you, Ron.
I guess.
But I mean, the game itself is so simplistic, but again, it's infuriating and it's addictive.
Yes, that was actually AJ's comment.
Addictive.
Like when I put a comment on Tim and AJ's latest video, which is Warlords and the Atari 2600. So it's not CoCo related, but I talked a little bit about the actual video itself. And then I said, by the way, thanks for stringing up the game on challenge. And AJ actually specifically mentioned the game is so addictive, which is true. Because I was only going to come on for like 5-10 minutes because I actually had some work to do, was waiting for my employee, but ended up being on for an hour and a half or something stupid.
Yeah, and I have to keep getting a higher and higher score to twist out all these functions.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm literally, like I said to Paul, I'm taking his original routines in the CoCo code and I'm turning these into what would be MC10 code, just CoCo wise, only using the A register, B register, D and X, and making it work on the original version. And I'm just having to go round and round and round until I get the first fruit and then second fruit and Pac-Man comes along just to be able to test that these routines work.
getting a lot of practice.
Also, we have a comment from 60 about the addictiveness of the game. He says, yeah, Paul seems to have a bit of a knack for that. Poker Squares is infuriatingly unfair, but definitely makes you poke at it again.
That's good. You know, I have a tendency to, you know, write the kind of games that I like to play, and those ones that have a hook to them that I don't know, have a replayability. Those are the ones that I gravitate towards too.
Yeah, and so you tend to do casual games too, where you don't have to like learn a manual to figure out how to play a game. It's very just pick up and go type thing. Yeah,
I for sure. Not, but because they're easier to write, right? Because I wouldn't be able to do another one. Like I couldn't. I just couldn't do a fast action Robotron or, you know, anything like that. It's beyond my capabilities. But and that's one of the reasons why, you know, if I've in the past, I've frequently started to write ports and versions of existing games, and I find I'm happier if I'm writing something. And Ghost Rush is a variation of Pack Rush, an existing game, but I wrote it in a way that I knew that I could do, as opposed to trying to recreate exactly the original. And so, creating, you know, doing something that's a bit of what I know I can do is also a good way to ensure that I finish something that I start too.
You can teach me about that.
Is there a Facebook group for game addiction?
Yeah, probably.
Probably is.
They need an 800 number.
Yeah, it's the TRS-80 CoCo forum, I think it's called.
Yeah. They need to be playing soft music and dim the lights, you know.
For sure.
Well, this does play little bits of music as you go up each level, so.
Never got to hear that.
That's because you didn't hit the fire button.
I hit the ones, just the ones.
The only instructions were hit the fire button, and
the
you didn't
first
get that
tune
far.
will play as soon as you hit the first fire button.
You know the little Dino Wars, little dinosaur game?
Oh, Run Dino Run?
Yeah, I never get past the first thing. I just keep playing it over and over again. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a little story about that. We've got there's a couple of hidden gems in there. If you type something, you can get infinite lives or run through shit.
God version.
No, it's not the bot version, but you can get a pretty high score because there are a couple of Easter eggs in there.
Neat.
Cool.
All right.
Any further discussion on Ghost Rush, or should we get Ken to announce what the game for next week's going to be?
Yeah, let's move on.
All right. We've heard it from the man himself. We're moving on. So next week's game is right here, if anybody recognizes that.
Ooh, Z89.
Yeah. Steve Bjork's CoCo 3 version of Zaxxon.
Yes. So it's a CoCo 3 only game. Z89 available from the usual places.
There's a couple versions of it too, I should mention. I think the gameplay is roughly the same, but like the splash screen here.
Yeah, the splash screen is different. I think the archive only has the one version. So yeah, so that is our game for next week. It is a Zaxxon game.
What's the difference in the screens?
There's a nice fancy color Z89 logo on the top on the newer.
They do that.
If you go to Curtis's website, he's got both splash screens up there that you can look at. And
but they did that in the original Zaxxon too. There's two screens.
The original CoCo version? Yeah, actually, you're right.
Mm-hmm. Just one that
and
has
basically the same way too.
Graphics, yeah,
you're right.
Although with the two different screens for this one, it was by two different companies that sold it, wasn't it? Because he changed it for a second company.
Yeah, because it was Game Point, and yeah, you might be right. I honestly don't remember that was a page I set up a long time ago.
I think that's right, Ken. That the first one was just Datasoft, and the second one was, if we're talking about the original Zaxxon, and the second one was for Radio Shack.
Also for the Z89.
Oh yeah, probably
sold by two different companies.
Yeah,
it's
cool. A good game. Lots of good digitized sound effects in it.
Yes,
yeah.
and it's
I've
got
actually
really good.
never played the Z89. I've played the heck out of Zaxxon, but I've never played the Z89 16 color version of it. So looking forward to that.
It is, plays just like the original Zaxxon, but has a little bit more in the background and some talking.
And I think he added something into the in space between the two islands. Didn't he add something?
When you're in space, there's also asteroids coming at you that can kill you, not just ships. So, and they take more than one shot to kill. So it makes it a little bit harder to stand in one place and just kill everything like you can in the original Zaxxon.
Yep. I should mention too, like as Ken mentioned, it's a CoCo 3 only game, but I think it only needs 128K to run too. So
I believe so. Yeah.
So if you have a base CoCo 3 without all the upgrades there, it should run fine. Oh yeah, Rick's holding up one of the. I have one of those two buried here somewhere. The actual manual.
Cool.
Oh, you got the entire set too, yeah.
So we know who's going to have a high score because he's got the manuals.
You're muted, Rick.
And Rick is muted.
Oh, I'm horrible at the game, but at least I have no excuse for not playing it.
The manual's probably on CoCo Archive, though, right? Hopefully, maybe.
Sure, I think I scanned it actually.
Yeah,
it did.
It had that fancy silver metallic ink cover, though.
Silver.
So everybody have fun playing that this week.
Yep, it's a good game.
And that is all I have to say.
Except you're just making us jealous with your cabin again.
Right?
Cabin and cat.
Okay, so Mark Mosley, do you want to do a commercial break first, or do you want me to go straight on to Game On News? There's a few bits, and we've covered some of it a little bit. But
all right, we'll do the commercial because we got to run at least one.
Okay, I'll go get a coffee in the meantime.
You are watching CoCoTALK, the world's leading weekly video podcast featuring the Tandy Color computer. We spread the love to the past, present, and future for all models, including the original color computer, the CoCo 3, and the world-renowned exclusive French-Canadian CoCo 2, the Radio Shack.
CoCoTALK would like to thank the patrons who sponsor our program, so our heartfelt gratitude goes out to Alan Huffman, Alan Murphy, Blair Ledoux, Boat and Aaron, Brendan Donahue, Brian Weasler, Brian Walsh, Karen Anscombe, D. Bruce Moore, Daddy Burrito, Daniel Williams, Diego, Eric Canales, Glenn Hewlett, Graham Vebke, Grant B., Grant Leedy, Henry Strickland, Jason Downs, J Style, Ken Reichert, Malfunct, Melly, Michael Pitsley, Mike Rayburn, OG Hugo, Paul Fiscarelli, Paul Shoemaker, Paul Thayer, Retro Tech Time, Rick Hewlin, Rob Inman, Rocky Hill, Stephen Wagner, Steve Batson, Steve Rasmussen, Terry Steen, Terry Steggy, The Backyard Shed Gang, Tim Thayer, Tom C., Tom Gunderson, Tom Heron, Tom S., Tony C., and William Athing. Thank you ever so much, patrons.
Hello, I'm David Ladd. Thank you for watching CoCoTALK, the world's leading live CoCoTALK show. ESP 8266-01 RS-232 TTL Wi-Fi network, 4-pin DIN, Bitbanger, DB9, PC IP, DriveWire.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Original Gamer Stevie Stroh here with you. And in case you didn't know, I've actually got merchandise, right? So I've got now 2 DVDs. This was my first DVD I released last year for the 25th anniversary Last Chicago CoCo Fest. This features 20 videos and 3 hours of color computer game videos. This is my second DVD. This is a brand new one for the 2017 Last Chicago CoCo Fest. And this one features 13 brand new color computer gameplay videos that you won't see anywhere else. RoboCop. Ooh, RoboCop. Gotcha, sucker. This is not bad. Not bad at all.
Yes, I did it. Oh, freaking right. Look at that. I made it past yellow belt. Very cool. Oh crap, I am getting the crap freaking bombed the hell out of me here. Okay, the square guy looks kind of like a puckering sphincter. All right, there we go. Game over.
Oh, that didn't last long.
That's what she said. Okay, so I've got to jump over the spikes and under the ball. So, if you like my videos and you want to help support a starving artist, you can head on over to 8bit256.com and grab yourself a copy of one or both of these DVDs because they're both awesome. And if you like color computer gameplay videos, you might like these DVDs. So check them out. Thanks for watching my videos, everybody.
In a world where RGB produces black and white video, one cable can make a difference. Switcheroo. CoCo3ScartCable.com.
Fletcher, I don't need that report tomorrow.
Great, JT.
I need it tonight.
But JT...
Fletcher saved $300 on her office away from the office. Radio Shack's revolutionary Model 100 computer. It's a word processor, phone directory, and dialer. It even communicates with the office computer.
Fletcher, how's that report? Fletcher.
Radio Shack's Model 100. Save $300 and put it to work.
You'll go far, Fletcher. You'll go far.
From around the world, what you need to know. Get caught up on News with L. Curtis Boyle.
And now a Muppet News Flash.
Take it away, Curtis.
Okay. Get the right. Hey, you guys see that? I think.
Yes.
Okay, so that's just updating what we talked about earlier here about the official version of Ghost Rush for the Dragon, which Paul uploaded to the Dragon Facebook group, and I uploaded to the World of Dragon archive forums. So that's up and ready to go. So if you guys have any dragons or any dragon emulators you want to run it in, you can download it there. This is the version that I uploaded to the archive, which has both the tape and the disc versions. I think, Paul, you just uploaded the disc version to the Facebook group, correct? Or did you upload both?
Both.
Okay, cool. Because I know, like in the UK, the Dragon was a lot more popular with cassette than it was with disc. That was a fairly expensive add-on. So I even threw a couple of screenshots up there a little bit later. And I remember.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, next, M. David Johnson on the CoCo list. That's the listserv email group. Posted that he fixed a few bugs in some CoCo educational games. There's a Bible quiz game, advanced subtraction, advanced division. So we fixed a few bugs in these and re-uploaded the disk images. I think we covered this site like a long time ago. But basically he's got some updates to those if you're into some of the education stuff. So some of these ones down over here in particular have been updated. And he's got the source code actually there. You can download the disk image or the source code raw. So you can fiddle around with it as much as you like. But
he had a table at CoCo Fest. He was actually handing out all those on a flash drive. I actually got one from him.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, pretty cool, actually.
Shoot, I should have properly met him then. Remind me next year, Mark.
I will try.
Go visit people properly. I had so many people coming by our table, though, it was kind of busy.
I know the feeling.
And speaking of Paris Surratt here, so him and Keys actually released the next game pack for the AGD engine. So this is pack number 57 with 6 new games. 2 of them are the old style, larger sprite games, and then 4 of them are using that new smaller 8x8 sprites that he added in recently. So he's been creating some of those. So the 6 new games. Beef 1 and Beef 2, which are the old style sprite, larger sprite engine. And then he's got Mezzania Mage Rage Part 2, Paintball 2048, Space Thunder, and the Humans, which are the small sprite ones. And he's actually got screenshots. Also, if you're on the Dragon Archive, this here is your list of keys to actually control the game too. So we've got here some screenshots. I'll just kind of scroll them fairly quickly here, just to kind of give you an idea. Mostly standard platformer type of stuff. He also had these initial versions he did of the splash screens. He's got updated versions at the end, so I'm assuming he updated them so they're a lot more clear to see. This one's more the standard space shooter genre.
So beef doesn't seem to have anything to do with cows, surprisingly.
No, there's an arcade game I remember playing on my iPhone. It was called Dead Beef or something. So is that a series? Because it was a space shoot 'em up too, and I don't know if that's related for sure, but it kind of sounds like it is. I don't know where that name came from or what it means.
Dead beef is something programmers use. It's they put stuff into a pattern into RAM so that is unallocated or whatever, and then if you've got a bug or something, you can track down and see what, if you've got a pointer pointing off into dead beef, bad pointer somewhere or something like that.
So it's a debugging tool kind of thing.
Yeah. So
I never knew that.
Yeah, and it was first place I saw it actually used was on the Amiga, but I'm sure it came from probably Unix or something before that. So
okay. That's interesting. I had no idea about that. So this one says save the humans. It's called the humans. So save as many humans as possible. Use a small sprite engine. It almost looks like a Lemming style game with these little guys. I'm not sure if that's what it is. I haven't tried playing it yet, but it'd be interesting if somebody want to try it because we've been clamoring for a Lemmings port, and there was a Lemmings port for the CoCo 3 being done years ago. Nick, you might remember that from when you had your active CoCo 3 game development site going, but I think it got dropped at some point. Is Nick still here and awake?
Yep, still awake.
You remember what I'm talking about?
What was it again? I wasn't listening.
Good man.
CoCo 3 Lemmings port. Somebody had started one. You had your game development page?
Yeah, so I'll check up to see the guy's name. Hang on.
Yeah, because he actually had a screenshot of it running. It actually looked pretty close to the Amiga Atari ST version. It looked pretty good.
I gotta remember where it is. Oh, keep going. If I find it, I'll try bring it up.
Anyway, this might be a Lemmings style game, which if it is, would be cool because I don't think the Dragon or the CoCo's had a Lemmings game before. So, although I'm not sure. There's Zania's title screen with funky patterns.
So these are all Spectrum ports, basically.
Yeah, using that AGD engine that they, I can't remember, something game designer. What does the A stand for again? On the blank.
For people that don't know, Arcade Game Designer is basically a game engine where you write code and tell the engine to place sprites in certain places and how they can move and stuff. And the engine does a lot of the stuff for you.
Okay. It was David Roper, by the way, for the Lemmings.
Okay, so I think somebody in the chat mentioned that too. Yeah, Karen mentioned that's what he thought it was too. Oh, Rocky Hill's got a bit on the dead beef. He said dead beef is made up of letters that are in hex, DEADBEEF, so it's all hex digits. So it's easy to look for when debugging memory locations if used in code. Cool. I had no idea the history of that.
Right.
I didn't even know it was a thing.
You could identify those two words much easier than you could identify 8 bytes of random. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even Microware, when they were doing the windowing driver for OS 9, they actually have what they call sync bytes for window descriptors and stuff. And they actually use C0 because it spells CoCo.
Dead beef is a steak, right?
It's a lot better than live beef. It's kind of...
As a steak, for sure.
This looks more like a standard, space shoot 'em up, Galaxian style, which I haven't seen too many of those on the AGD engine. So it'd be interesting to see how that one plays.
This is probably a dumb question, but Do you think somebody's going to go through back over all of these games he's released and introduce color?
He did himself. Now the problem is the way the Spectrum, like the Spectrum has two parts to their way their graphics are set up. So you have a 56 by 192 two-color bitmap, exactly like P-Mode 4 in the CoCo, which is why they decided to make a CoCo version of the AGD engine here. And that's what you're seeing here, all these photos. But the Spectrum has this extra thing where you can set on an 8x8 pixel, and you do 1 byte to define every 8x8 pixel grid, a foreground and a background color. And that's why you get color bleed on a lot of the Spectrum games, because you can't change the colors anywhere in between those 8 pixels.
Yeah, it basically has a separate layer for color attributes.
Yeah, which makes it really difficult to convert to the CoCo, because you have to basically redesign the graphics with that extra stuff in mind and try to redraw everything using artifacting or P-Mode 3 or whatever, which Para did on a few of his earlier ones, but it's a heck of a lot of work, so we kind of dropped it. If somebody wanted to take the time to, though, yeah, you definitely could. And he's actually been doing the MSX, the Super Sprite FM Plus board, which actually has 16 native colors. Then you can start faking it. If you made a CoCo 3 version of the engine, you probably could, because you can have 16 colors on screen once. You could probably do the equivalent of that a little bit easier.
Doing that in artifacting, it'd be tough.
Yeah, it's not impossible, but it's a lot of work.
So what we have, an answer to my question would be yes and no.
Yes, you can do it.
More no
but
than
it
yes.
is so time consuming, and there's like coming up on 300 games to convert. Ron, if you're volunteering, I'm sure Para would be happy with that.
And let's be frank, the
You were
color
a
on a
graphics guy.
Specky,
Go ahead.
I was going to say that the color on a Specky is such that it only works for a 2D side-scrolling platformer. That's the only place the color works, and not that well there. So it'd be a lot of work for not really that much aesthetically.
I got a fix. A Vectric screen.
So anyway, for those of you who have been following
the
the AGD stuff, there's 6 more games here, including 4 that use that new feature that they added for the smaller sprites. Looks like they got a pretty good variety. They got some, standard platformers, which AGD is really famous for. Looks like they have some standard shooters and stuff too, which is not something you see too often with the AGD engine. So I'd be interested to see if people give these a try and see what they think.
Now, the original author of the arcade game designer that ran on the Spectrum back in the day recently started working on a new version. So we may see new games that have a whole bunch of new stuff and a new version of the multi-platform arcade game designer.
Okay. Because I know there were some updates to the designer for, what was that game we just did? Mire. We actually made it one of the feature game on challenges, didn't we, Ken?
Yeah, we did that for a Game On Challenge.
Because that's the one that actually had layers of sprites. You have sprites go behind each other and
Yeah.
behind tiles and stuff. So it was a bit more advanced engine. I don't know if that's related to what you're talking about, James.
And it also had more music in it.
No, well, they're two different products. One was the inspiration, and it runs on the Spectrum. And the original author he's expanding it because he saw all this stuff going on. And the other one was somebody else that's doing a PC development platform for doing these games, and you can target multiple other platforms with, because people have rewritten the engine. But it's basically it's a language, and it's a compiler and an engine, and it compiles that language into code that calls the engine. And well, you could make about anything with it, but platformers is mostly what it was designed for.
Yeah, because I think the original one doesn't support like scrolling or anything, right?
There have been some extensions that you can include into a game, like music player. What else? I don't know. There's been 2 or 3 that there was a way to tack it on, but it's not something that's native in the language.
Yeah, and it'd be brute forced even on the original Spectrum hardware.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Oh, cool. I'll have to keep an eye on that other updated version there to see what comes out of that on the cross-platform. Hey, now somebody who's actually in our chat right now, Erico. He's been working on Lander Venture, which is kind of, I'm not sure, he could probably describe in the chat better the game. I haven't had too much time to look at it. But basically, he's done a little drive around the world, which is a bunch of these. It's like a lunar lander game where you're flying around the caverns and stuff, and you have to land in certain spots and avoid hitting walls. But it's multi-screen, so there's a lot of different screens you flip around before. And he actually does a kind of a walkthrough here, running an emulator at 5 times normal speed, so it doesn't take 5 minutes. It's only take 1 minute. So I'll actually play the video to kind of show what it looks like. So it's a 3x10 in size. I'll let him kind of describe it in the chat there for a better explanation of what the actual purpose of the game is, because I think it's kind of a combination of an arcade lunar lander game with some extra elements, which is the adventure part of it. So I'll play the video so you guys can see the maps, and then hopefully Erico, by that time with the delay here, will be able to give us a little bit of a description in the chat I can read out for everybody for the audio podcast. So here we go. Remember, this is 5 times normal speed.
Just as a lunar lander game, this is cool.
It kind of reminds me of Cavern of Mars and
yeah,
but meets what was that vector graphic game that had landscapes like this? I can't remember. There was
Lunar Lander.
No.
There's an Atari ST game that the Amigos covered recently. It was like this, where you had different screens you're flying, but we also had stuff shooting at you as well. But I can't remember the name of it either. But it was similar to this in basic concept.
This could be easily done in the CoCo 1 and 2 at normal speed.
Well, he is running it at normal speed, like he's kind of like it's written totally in basic. So
it's in basic.
He mainly did this just so you could actually see the
it takes longer
the maps,
to fly
basically.
around. Yeah.
Now his other video shows when you land, and when you land, it actually switches to an SG4. And Erico's an artist, and so it's an SG4 screen that kind of like, I think one of them showed like it was like a landscape, but it was really cool. So
was that a static shot or was that a video?
Maybe it was a static shot. I thought it was a video. No, because I think it was a video. He landed.
There was a video of it landing.
Yeah, it switched to that SG4 mode screen that was like it's almost like you in an adventure game where you walk into another room, and so it was sort of that. You landed and it popped up, and it had a little description of what you saw, and it showed it, and then he just took off again.
I must have missed that one, because I'm looking at his YouTube channel. I don't see that video on here, so he must have put it on Facebook or something.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what's really neat about this is he's using multiple different modes within the game.
Okay, yeah, he's mentioning he's working on the adventure part of it now. It was published in a magazine as a type-in, and the landing pad in SG4. It's a GIF on Discord and Facebook. Discord, unfortunately, is a pain in the ass to share with. I'll see if I can grab that for next week. I'll put that as kind of an additional add-on to it. Okay, now we got the Jim Gary collection. So there's a few updates from Jim. So the first one here is called Star Command Sigma, which was originally written for the NEC PC 6001 in 1982, which I believe is also the Nostromo game that Alan Murphy's working on. Isn't that on the same platform that you're porting it from?
Yep, that's the one.
Because it actually has a VDG chip, the same as a CoCo, though it has a custom character ROM, if I remember.
Correct.
So I'm definitely not going to play this whole video because it's over half an hour. He did a long play. But basically, it's the same. Absolutely no Star Trek theme there. But nicely laid out. I mean, the original NEC one, because of some of the custom characters, some of the characters obviously look a little bit different. He also did some renaming because the original version actually had some different text here to avoid getting sued by Paramount. So they called them, I'll show you on another screen about it, but it's a pretty nicely involved Star Trek game for a bit of, it's better than some of the basic ones I've seen in the past. Now, this one here is one of the ones he decided to actually write a blog entry on too. So that's over the basic type in Maniacs. Now this one here is one of the ones there, but here you can see the difference in the font. So the top one here is the neck, and you can see it's a Klimzon because that's not Klingon. You can't get sued. And here's the MC10 version as well. But you can see the character set's a little bit different. The letters are a little bit bigger. It's kind of like some of the lowercase kits I remember the CoCo 1 and 2 having back in the day.
There's also a complete kanji font that was implemented in the NEC line. I don't believe it's in the NEC Trek that was done for the US. It might be, I could just be wrong. But the Japanese version of the machine also has a whole separate font in it. So it's got kind of like semi-graphics, it's got kind of like IBM character graphics, and it has kanji.
Okay. Now, you did mention here that there was a further version done a year later that was done on the MSX, which obviously has like, full graphics and color and got a fair bit fancier type thing. That'd be a good project for a CoCo 3 port of this, actually. But he mentions like he renamed the Klimzons to Klingons and stuff. And like he was even trying to figure out like on the original game, because they're trying to avoid getting sued, they still have the Enterprise as an E. So what would that stand for to avoid the copyright problem? And I don't know if he ever found out, but.
Could be anything. Excelsior. Who knows? Yeah.
Well, that's a Star Trek property too.
Yeah, that's right. That was a Star Trek ship too.
Or ship Earwax.
4, I think, yeah. Earwax. Anyway, it's a nice port, and it's a fairly robust Star Trek, especially for the MC10. Like there's some other ones that were fairly small. I remember back in the day and pretty basic, and then there were some pretty extravagant ones. Even on the CoCo, we had a few like Star Trek 3 by Lance Miklas for Adventure International. Was one of the very first 32K extended basic games I remember being commercially sold. And it was a pretty extensive one too. So it's nice that the MC10's actually got a fairly extensive Star Trek. And then another one he did here is called Sheep Station, originally by Philip Coates, 1985, and published in Tim Hartnell's second giant book of basic computer games. A little bit of that one. Now, would this be an Australian themed game, Nick? Like, do you guys do a lot of sheep farming in Australia? I believe you do, don't you?
Oh, there are, yeah. Yeah.
So do you want to, watch this for a little bit and tell us how accurate it is?
Okay. Not that I know much about sheep farming, but anyway, I can fudge it. Go ahead.
So this is one of those standard, simulation type things. Like on the CoCo, we had Viking and Erland and Castle Grey Moon and a ton of others of these text-based things where you're taking turns and trying to manipulate resources and handle wars and stuff. Now, in case of sheep farming, I don't think you go to war in here, but who knows? I could be wrong.
I'm sure there's been a war over sheep before.
Yeah.
Well, I know Canada just finally ended their war with, what country is it, that little island we were fighting over?
Australia.
There's a big discussion at Discord about it at one point.
Norway?
Yeah, it might be. There's a little island between Greenland.
That's a barren little island where they keep taking down the other person's flag and putting up their own, and then they leave a bottle of some sort of liquor behind.
Yeah.
Yep.
The friendliest war ever. And they finally resolved it now, decades later. Now we've actually, I think each got part of the island or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, half the island. So now we can officially walk to Europe.
Yep.
We just have to take a boat to the island and then a boat off the island.
What's that big flightless bird in Australia again? Emus?
Emu.
Emus. Wasn't there like a war that the government of Australia waged against the emus?
Yeah, they brought in machine guns and everything else for that one, and it wasn't too successful. The emus kind of won.
The emus.
You lost to an emu.
Yeah, one of Simon Whistler's channels actually did a special or an article on that, like a 20-minute thing talking about it. And he was having trouble not laughing throughout the whole thing. But they were pretty serious. I mean, they were losing a lot of resources because emus were eating and trampling stuff. And then they brought in, these ex-army vets with machine guns and stuff. And of course, first couple shots, it scares them off and they can run like hell. So they couldn't actually get to them. There's an arcade game you can make, Nick. Right the wrong.
Emu attack.
Yeah, that's an idea.
Emu star.
Yeah, gotta have a star in there.
Who needs a gun when you got emus?
You gotta have a star.
Yeah, Rocky Hill says an emu running with a machine gun. Now, that sounds like a good CoCo game.
Yeah.
Oh wait, they shoot back. Oh boy, look out.
So this is video that Simon had posted on Facebook showing the progress so far in the MC10 version as of the time he posted this. Obviously, it sounds like he's got further along. So this is a little intro splash screen, the little bouncing stuff, and then it also plays the music using the 2-voice 1-bit sound. So this might, as he said, sound a little bit harsh. Also, there's no control of the volume. I've dropped the volume a fair bit because it's pretty loud when I tried playing it, but we'll let you judge that. Just a quick little clip. But, you know, it sounds a little bit scratchy compared to the CoCo version, but you can definitely recognize the tune. You can hear both voices. So, and as Simon mentioned, he has some ways he can smooth it out afterwards, you know, once he gets the game fully working, if he decides to tweak it. So, but it's coming along quite good. I mean, that's about a week. I thought Paul did the original version quite fast. You know, it was 2 to 3 weeks, including debugging. Looks like Simon might even be able to beat him on that. So
he may indeed.
So for the MC10 owners in the audience there, I look forward to this game come out within the next week or two. Now this one, is Simon still on the call, or did he have to leave?
He had to leave.
Oh, shoot. Johan Coleman, I'm not sure where he's from in the MC10 group, is just starting to learn 6803 assembly language, and I know Simon's been helping him a bit in the background too. And he's porting a game that he called Shogun. It's a board game, and it looks somewhat similar to like chess or something like that. I'm not familiar with the game at all. But he's made this before on the ZX Spectrum for a 1K version, a 2K version for the ZX81, a 1K memory version for the ZX81, the 2K versions for tape. And he's also made a cartridge version for the Odyssey 2. So he's actually done cross-platform, and it's very minimal systems that he's going for. Like every one of these systems is 4K or less. So his plan on the MC10, I think, is to have it run in 4K. It won't need any RAM expansion at all. And he just did a little screenshot where he says, very first, you know, putting some stuff on the screen using 6803 assembly language. And then he's got some stuff where he's got a little bit further. He started to draw the grid. And this is a little video here he did of the work in progress stuff for his Odyssey version to kind of show what the game actually looks like. I'll probably get a stupid ad here on YouTube. Actually, I won't play it, but basically you're moving these pieces around, and it looks like you start each player on the top 2 rows, bottom 2 rows, which is similar to chess, and you can move more than one square at a time. So it looks similar to chess that way too. I don't know much about the game, so, but it looks like there's another MC10 machine language game coming our way. So the MC10's really been having a renaissance this last year or two. We've got those Japanese games added on. We've got, you know, Ghost Rush coming out now, and a bunch of others that have been worked on. So it's been quite fun. And the last of the Game On news here, this is a channel we have covered before, the Laird's Lair. And what they do is they do comparison videos. So they take a game that has been published on more than one platform, and officially on more than one platform by the same company usually, and they do a comparison video. So they run all 4 in this case at the same time, so you get to see the graphics kind of comparatively. And then they'll see a little red audio speaker icon beside the one they're playing the sound from. So you actually get to hear how the sounds change between the different versions as well. So in this case here, they did Arcadia, which have we played that one on the challenge? I don't think we have yet, Ken, have we?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so that's maybe one to put in the old backpack there. So this one features the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64, the Dragon 32, and the VIC-20. So I'll play a little bit so you can see the graphics, and then I'll kind of jump ahead to show you some of the sound effects and music between them all. I do like the Dragon 32 splash screen, I think the best out of all of them. And right now you're hearing the sound from the Spectrum. Let's go just a little bit here to actual gameplay. On the Spectrum one, which is the sound you're hearing right now, you can actually see the color bleed when it hits the right nuts to that, what we're talking about with James before, about the color attribute for each square on the screen.
Sounds like my stomach. Oh, that sounds like the other end.
This is the C64 SID chip in action for sound. Yeah, we got an ad. You guys hungry? Ready for a burger?
They never made that game for the CoCo, did they?
Well, it was made for the Dragon, so it should work maybe with a patch or two.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I'd love to try it out.
As you can see,
for
Ryzen 7000
two? Really?
CPUs include up to 2 core chiplets, each with 8 Zen
At least this is
4
computer
cores,
related.
built on an optimized version of TSMC's high-performance.
I don't know. I want to go back to the buns. Those look good.
Yeah, I'm kind of hungry now myself. So obviously the SID chip is a bit more powerful in the sound department, so there's a lot of explosion sounds, etc.
And the noise generator.
Yeah. Now up on the Dragon one here. It's a bit more Spectrum-y, except for the explosion when the player dies. That's actually closer to the Commodore one than the Spectrum version. And of course, since they didn't have artifacting, they chose a, well, in this case, the Puyan palette, as we like.
An ugly color mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ugly color mode.
Yeah, this would have looked better, I think, in the other color set with a blue background. I think.
Everything looks better in the other color set.
Except skiing.
Except skiing.
Except skiing.
Skiing, it did well. And also, what's that? There's a easy ski with a hungry horse character in it. The Dragon, that one actually didn't look too bad either. Find the player dying here. That definitely sounds more.
That's pretty good.
Sid like. Oh, I'm not going to bother playing the other one. I'm not sitting through that many ads.
It does look good.
So anyway, that's an interesting. I do like those comparison videos because it gives you a really good view of what people were dealing with when they came out at the time. And there's definitely a year or two difference between the release of some of those two. So obviously the programmers got a chance to learn the hardware a bit better. And also they had new hardware to deal with, like the C64. The VIC-20 was much more primitive on the sound, I can tell you right now, than the C64 was because it didn't have a SID chip. But so I like
at least they had a sound chip.
We did. It was just CPU driven. Anyway, that's the end of the game on news. So do you want me to go straight into the regular news or?
Yeah, because I already ran the regular news intro.
Oh, right. You did. I'll
Thinking
queue up
ahead,
the
he
next
was. He preloaded
Dempster's
it.
bun ad here for you.
So that place, was it a Canadian place? Not familiar with it.
It's just a brand name that makes bread and buns and stuff here. It's a bakery, a national chain bakery.
But only in Canada.
Right. Get up to here. So Adrian's Digital Basement, second YouTube channel, which has the Apple IIs type thing using the square brackets here. I thought was kind of cool. Recently acquired a CoCo 1. Now he's done some videos on CoCo 3s and CoCo 2s before. He's never had a CoCo 1 before. Now this one, I think, is a D board. And I know there's been some discussion on Facebook. There's a guy trying to fix a CoCo 1, or is it Discord? Is trying to fix a CoCo 1 D board as well, where it's having problems booting up with RAM, etc. So he's got kind of the same problems. And there's definitely a lot of bodging and wiring and stuff done here as somebody did upgrades. But this one has actually been modified a bit more heavily.
He's put the repair video up on that that machine up today, just a couple hours ago.
Oh, okay. I didn't get a chance to check that. So, but you can see here it's an older style case because it's got the RAM badge in the right corner. The label is off to the left rather than centered. So this is usually a DRE board. It's got the black plastic, as you can see where it's worn down where the wrist would have been, which is exactly what mine looked like. But it's been upgraded with a melted keyboard. I'm presuming from either the 64K CoCo from 83 or maybe one of the CoCo 2 keyboards. And that would have required adapters to even get to work because it didn't have the same connector for the
Which
keyboard.
he has.
Yeah.
Looks like a CoCo 2 keyboard to me. It looks like, yeah, my CoCo 2 had one like that.
You can see all the bodge wiring here. Now, some of this is required. A D board to get 64K, you had to cut traces. You had to do a bunch of things to get it to work. But he's also got some stuff here that's actually soldered to cartridge connector pins. Now that I'm not sure what exactly that would be. Did he figure that out, Mark?
I haven't seen the repair video, but those wires go nowhere. So it was something that was put in and later got removed.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think.
Look, just Just a guess. It looks like some of the handshaking lines on the cartridge port, but I could be wrong. Or it could be just power or ground. And
yeah, because I'm trying to remember, there was a halt switch that people had put on, but I didn't think that went through the cartridge port where you could actually tell the computer to halt dead, like to pause a game in progress type thing. But I don't remember it being in the cartridge port.
Well, it depends on if the signal goes out to it or not. I don't remember.
Yeah, like maybe you need to halt the cartridge. I mean, most of the time you just halt the CPU type thing, but
they just didn't want to solder to a CPU and went to the cartridge instead, probably.
And it's got a composite out mod, of course.
And that looks like almost a homemade version, or another person ripped off the one that I had. I can't remember who sold it, but I had one that had a composite color, composite black and white, and sound coming out of it.
Okay, Sixie corrected me. His horse goes skiing. That's the game I was trying to remember. The dragon that also used the white color set well. Rocky Hill will be coming up on one of his videos in a little bit here. So in the comments for that video, someone said that this was an official Radio Shack upgrade for the CoCo. Is that true? I don't believe it is it?
No.
What's that? The gray wires?
I think the composite mod.
No, I don't think so.
Like I do remember Mark said they did have some official composites for schools, but I don't think they look like this.
No, they like replaced the modulator.
Right.
Certainly in the CoCo 2 one, they replaced the modulator. Yeah.
Oh no, he's saying the keyboard. Yeah, I think you could purchase the keyboard.
Yeah, that was available from Tandy because the adapter board, you had to buy that also.
Yeah, and that was what you ordered through National Parts. They didn't really carry it in stores, I don't think, until the
right.
deluxe CoCo keyboard was being sold separately.
I don't remember if it was just a kit you got or you had to buy the two pieces separately.
It looks like there's 3 wires soldered to 3 pins on the cartridge port. And I'd have to look at the schematic for the cartridge port to see what the pins on that edge of the connector are. Does anybody know off the top of their head, some of you hardware gurus?
Yeah, I don't know what that mod was.
The high end of it, so.
Well, do you remember what those pins were? The ones on the far bottom of the cartridge port? Like were they voltages or
flip?
Certain lines of some sort?
The high end address line's down by that end in the Slim B, so. Maybe SCS is in there.
SCS or SL, that, yeah.
But that's as far down as it's going. He's only caught the first couple rows of pins.
So that makes me even more curious what those wires would have been put in for.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'll have to see if in the second video if he kind of figures that out. So anyway, yeah, I guess we'll mention that as Mark has mentioned, the update video to this of actually getting it repaired, because when he turns it on, it just comes up with @ and other characters. So obviously there's a problem. I don't even know what the problem was solved. A lot of people are speculating RAM, especially considering this is a 64K upgraded version. So I will bring the follow-up video on to next week's show after I have a chance to watch it and see what exactly I'll figure out. Alan Huffman's been rather busy this week. He's posted multiple, like he's still been posting to his blog, but he's been doing a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with CoCo, so I haven't been actually mentioning them on the show. But now in this week, he's actually posted a few. So the first one is kind of a follow-up, and you may remember this from the Christmas challenge in 2021, where people were trying to make something that made a tree shape in as little basic code as possible and using little tricks like string and other things. So this is a screenshot of his original version that he did here. So he actually had some follow-up from a visitor to his blog named Sebastian T about a real clever trick that includes self-modifying the basic program itself, which allows a program to be shrunk further by manipulating the string data that works in BASIC, but you actually can't enter from BASIC. So it's a little program that actually self-modifies itself, and then you delete the lines that did the self-modification, then you save it back out, and now it's become permanently part of the BASIC program, which is kind of an interesting little trick. It kind of goes to the explanation here and gives thanks to Sebastian. Here's the original post from Sebastian to Alan. And it does crunch it down even a little bit smaller now because it embeds some of the strings that he had to build manually. So that was kind of cool. It's now 61 bytes to draw that tree. And then this is another follow-up one. So I think it was just a week or two ago we covered he was trying to do a way of detecting if you have 64K installed in the machine and the different ways you can possibly do that. And in this particular one here, he's trying to make that a little bit easier to type in because this is a basic program. So he's been trying to crunch, like it's a lot of data statements to do the machine language routine that actually swaps the SAMs, banks in and out stuff to do 64K check. So he was trying to get it so it's easier for somebody to type in if they don't have, some way to OCR it in or anything else, and they just want to be able to type it in. It's less prone to mistakes, less typing. So he goes through a bit of a journey of figuring out how to optimize the code to make it smaller. So he's got it crunched down to like this many data statements, and there's some other alternative ones that shrink it even a bit more type thing. And he's also, as usual, one thing about Alan, when he does these posts, he doesn't assume he's picked the best way to do something. So he always asks for feedback, and he usually gets a fair bit of it. I know William Astle, the creator of LW Tools and LW Asm, is a frequent contributor to the blog answers to Alan. I've occasionally thrown in a few things when I have something useful to contribute. Usually William is much smarter at this stuff than I am. And some other people, like obviously the Sebastian guy came in with one too. So. And speaking of LW tools, so another thing that Alan did is he actually put up a tutorial on how to get LW tools set up on completely start to finish. So this is assuming you don't even have the C compiler, the LW tools or the assembler and stuff there, not just the LW tools part itself, but the stuff that it needs to run. So he goes through how to set it all up in Windows. And then he found out after the fact that apparently somebody had already pre-bundled this, so he didn't have to do any of this, but he said it was good as a learning experience anyway. And there's a couple different compiler systems you can install. Cygwin's the one he chose here. I think MingW is another one that also you can use. But he goes through the whole thing, start to finish here.
Cygwin is actually a Unix type development environment that runs on Windows. Also, there's MSys2 and yeah, the WinMG or whatever.
Yeah, MingW or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, they basically support Unix type shell scripts and they create a complete Windows or Linux type environment. So
yeah. So anyway, he goes extensively on how to set this all up from start to finish, putting it set up to link with emulators and everything else. And then like he said, he mentioned that he found out that somebody had already pre-bundled this, so just you unzip it and it's ready to go. But as he said, it was a good learning experience.
There's bound to be other tool chains that need to be done the same thing. So the basic structure's there.
Good to learn it. Next up, we've covered this channel a few times before, Alderson Retro Computing, and they've normally been doing all these little YouTube shorts, and he's acquired a CoCo Pi 400. He's got a CoCo 3, and he's got a CoCo, MC10. So he's got a variety of machine systems. And in this case here, he does a quick little 4-minute video on setting up VCC, and I think he's using one of the latest versions of VCC, and also setting up the EdTASM ROM cartridge. So you kind of just start to finish, like how do you install a cartridge into the virtual CoCo. He also gets at near the end of it on how to cut and paste code between, say, the Windows side into VCC directly, so you don't have to actually like type it in on the virtual CoCo itself. You can actually type it in on a more modern editor like Notepad++ or whatever, Visual Studio, whatever tickles your fancy. And then shows you how to do the pasting across. You can actually have it typed in basically from you doing a paste into the CoCo itself. So I won't play the video here, but he's actually making this a series. This is part 1. I don't know how much he's going to be into teaching assembly versus teaching how to use the assembler, etc. So I'm interested to see where he goes with this. So I'll be keeping an eye out on his channel as well. This one here, now these are a bit longer videos from Pedro Pena, otherwise known as Rocky Hill. He's in the chat as well. So he did 2 videos here. The first one is an update on recreating the 263134A CoCo 2 board. And he goes through some of the details, some of the things he found wrong in the original schematics he had to fix.
This is a 263134A CoCo 2. I am attempting.
So basically he goes and he shows the schematic where he's trying to get everything perfectly laid out so that all the ports line up the back when you add the connectors, etc., so it'll fit properly in the case. He's actually got the real RF can and the real power supply in there right now. And he kind of goes through some of the details of what he's encountered in doing it. And mentioning once again that the static schematics have some errors in it. He also notes that he's going to be working on a 263134B, which is the T1 lowercase VDG version. That VDG chip is different pinout, and the board layout's a bit different, even beyond that. So that's another project. So he's been gradually coming up with ways, and he's releasing these all publicly once he gets them done, schematics to make your own replacement motherboards for CoCo 1, 2s, and 3s. Been basically trying to cover a fair bit of the line. We've seen his CoCo 3 ones before too, and now that people are recreating chips like the Ed Snyder and Gary Becker doing the Gimme X to replace the Gimme, the Pepper chip that replaces the Salt chip that Pedro himself has done, and basically we're getting to the point. It's not going to be too far in the future where we'll be able to make brand new CoCo 2s and 3s, etc. We've got 3D printers now that can actually handle the size of a case, and hopefully that'll start stemming the tide of these eBay auctions where a CoCo 3 is going for $400-$500 for a 128K version type thing, because that's getting just to be nuts expensive. And if you can just make a new one, then even 3D printing the case stuff would be cheaper than some of these eBay auctions are going for. You're getting brand new parts. So
want to pay that much for a CoCo 3, go buy an NFT or something and leave them for the rest of us.
Yeah. We'll make a CoCo NFT. We'll make that like a patron way to raise money. Buy a picture of a CoCo 3, only $300. So anyway, he did this video here, and then he did a kind of a follow-up one a few days later here. And this one's titled Using a Cell Phone Picture to Help Root the Top Traces of the CoCo 2 Recreation Board in KiCad. Now, I'm not familiar with all this stuff because this is all hardware and it's above my pay grade. So maybe one of you guys can comment on that. But basically, he's using a cell phone camera to actually get a nice high-resolution picture to figure out, because the boards are double-sided. There's traces and stuff on the top end and on the bottom end. But the top end's got a lot of stuff sitting on it. It's a little bit hard to see. So for those of you that might have watched this already, maybe Mark Bosley or something like that, any comments on what exactly he's covering here?
I haven't seen this one yet.
Oh, okay. I know he's been putting in some stuff in the chat here.
Yeah, the CoCos are a 2-layer board, basically top and bottom.
Yeah, this was before the 4 layers, which when repairs really get hard.
Yep, or 6 or 8 or 10.
Okay, Chris Duras, he has watched Adrian's video and he said it had a bad SAM and a bad 6809. So the RAM actually was good, it sounds like. Okay, Pedro says in the chat, they are longer than I wanted, but I was speaking slowly. So he's trying to down it so I'd understand it. Didn't work, sorry. And he said the CoCo 3 is a prime candidate. Obviously, that's the harder one. That's the unicorn. I mean, they're there. You can get them, but the prices have gone so high. Anyone wanting to get a real CoCo 3 hardware, that's an investment now just to get one. So basically, the two parts here to combine is about 20 minutes going to this CoCo 2, the 3134A. And like I said, he's planning on making these all publicly available when he's done, so that anybody who's got the proper files and can send them in and get ordered. Maybe somebody wants to actually start manufacturing it to actually start reselling CoCo 1, 2s, and 3s again for the new market. Maybe that's something like Frank at Retro Rewind might be interested in doing at some point, or maybe somebody else like Mark or whoever, which would be kind of cool because, like I said, eBay's just getting out of control. Next up, this is a bit of a follow-up to last week. Chibiakuma's Keith in the UK here. He's done his semi-language books, which I know some people here in the on the call actually have these books. I think Alan Murphy, you've got both of them, don't you? Or is Alan still here? Anyway, there are semi-language books teaching you semi-language, but not just for the CPU, but how to use the sound hardware and the graphics hardware and read joysticks and the keyboard and all kinds of things. So he's got stuff on 68000s, on Z80s, C80s, 6502s, 6809s. He covers, hardware from the Dragon and the CoCo to the C64 to the Amiga to the Nintendo, all kinds of things. And he's got some that are specific to certain CPUs, which we've covered a lot in the past, especially when he's doing Dragon and CoCo stuff. And then he's been doing an 11-part series that's kind of basics of basic hardware, which is stuff that is cross-platform agnostic, or at least, can cover multiple platforms. And last week, we covered some of the stuff that he was doing on sound and explaining how sound works. And he actually did one of the better explanations I've seen. I actually understood it. This one here, he's kind of covering what he calls other hardware terminology. So this is covering joysticks, like what's the difference between an analog and a digital stick and how do they work? And how do you read them differently type thing. Strobing when you're dealing with hardware, dealing with DACs and ADCs for reading, analog joysticks or, sending sound samples, et cetera, out. And the multiplexer, which is actually fairly specific to the CoCo and the Dragon, because the SAM, which is the synchronous address multiplexer, and Nick, you can attest to this, what all is hooked up to the SAM that you can sit there and program what you're reading or writing to between the two different PIAs, et cetera. Like you've got joysticks and keyboard and sound.
Joysticks, sound, yeah.
All combined onto basically, just one little set of addresses. You program inputs and outputs for each individual pin, and you're doing all this, running through the one SAM chip, which is also handling RAM and a bunch of other stuff and helping the VDG along. It's a
dual 4-port switcher, essentially. You can switch 4 devices to the one.
Yeah. Rocky just even mentioned that second video, they're basically using a picture to overlay over the board to position the components and root it. And then he also said the Gimme X makes 2 CoCo 3s. You have a brand new CoCo 3 plus a leftover Gimme for another CoCo 3, which is true.
Yeah.
Once you swap it out, we've got this extra Gimme. Might as well get one that has a blown one or something, or you can just get the board and make your own, and then you have a Gimme for backwards compatibility testing. So Keith's videos here have been very, very, they're very good at instructional videos. And like I said, he covers a lot of cross-platform stuff. And he actually, compares, how you do things differently between different CPUs or different architectures of graphics or sound or whatever else. So it makes it a good way to compare, like, doing a 6809, you can do some pretty powerful stuff with the CPU itself, with the registers and the indexing modes and stuff we have. But, there's some advantages of having a SID chip where you can do sound where the chip's doing it all type thing. So he actually gives you a really good broad view of how all these different things work on these different platforms and what are the strengths and the weaknesses of each. And he's pretty honest about it. So it's a really good, unbiased. And if you are interested in doing cross-platform programming, it's a really excellent all of his series. You can pick the one you want to try to code for and learn exactly how that particular machine works. And his books are really good too. Next up, Color Computer Programming. He's been doing a lot of little basic tutorials here. And this is one that apparently he wrote a while ago and then he kind of forgot how he did it. So I sent him a message because I'm pretty sure I know what he's talking about. And he's done some little graphic demos using getput. And, the standard getput when you use the G option for graphic detail is kind of slow because it's basically doing bit shifting of your shape live as you're trying to put it on the screen. Now, there's a trick if you use even byte boundaries and you get on an even boundary and you put it on the same boundary, then it doesn't have to do all the shifting stuff. So it's quite a bit faster. It's copying bytes at a time. And that's a technique that I know Rainbow and a few other magazines published back in the early 80s once everybody kind of figured out, because it wasn't documented properly in the basic manuals, extended basic manual at all. So it does things a lot faster. Now, in this case here, he's actually, from what I understand, he didn't show the full source listing, but he's actually PCLSing the entire screen between drawing each character as he's moving it around. So I'll let him do a little bit of explanation and a little bit of a demo of it.
But with Kickman, that was just, if you look at my Kickman video, it was one of the first videos I posted. That used page flipping. And this is not using page flipping. Now you're going to see a large sprite, and I'm just going to run this and press enter, and now what it's doing is it is getting the information. So there's a little bit of a pause, and so here's Link from, if anybody's a Zelda fan, for the NES, the first NES.
Did pretty good for 4 colors.
You'll recognize Link here. And it's just a blue background with a green border, and it's in RGBY. Red, green, blue, yellow. So Link is only made of 3 colors, and the background's blue because you only get 4 colors. Now with Kickman, I had a large sprite, and it was actually because at the time I didn't have a joystick. Okay, so I mean, this is real time.
And if you compare it with his older Kickman one he was referencing here, it's a lot faster.
This downward
He's got a little bit of a
thrust of the sword. Okay, so down, up, down. Okay, like he's defeating an enemy. If there was, imagine there was an enemy in front of him. Now,
anyway, it shows that the Microsoft Basic forget put, if you knew about this trick about the even byte boundary, you could do some pretty quick graphics. And I remember I did a little running Kung Fu dude in P Mode 4 that was probably about 2 to 3 times, if not 4 times bigger than Link is here. And you can run it pretty well full throttle, even without a double speed poke. And it animates fast, like it's doing probably, I don't know, 8 frames a second at least, and just in basic. So it's pretty decent. And of course, in NitroSign Basic 9, we've been optimizing Get Put there too, so you can get some really fast animations there as well. So you can do some pretty decent games in basic. And I think people that just had the extended basic manual back in the day and followed the manual with the comma G graphic detail thing were very disappointed how slow it ran. And that people, I think, really stopped programming basic games because if you followed the manual, it was dead slow. Fred, you had a comment?
Yeah, there are a couple spots in Andark 3 where I think that technique could be used to improve a couple elements of my game I'm writing. So then, yeah, it'd be useful.
Yeah. Yeah, for those of you who don't know it, I remember Rainbow did an article on it, and I'll have to pull out the issue and find out what it is and post it at some point. But basically, this little elliptical flying saucer thing, and they showed it flying straight up from the bottom left, about 2/3 of the way up the screen, then it takes off diagonally to the upper right. And they did that the first time using the G option, and you watch this kind of ripple effect as it's drawing, and it takes 20 seconds to cross the screen. And then they took the exact same shape and just took the G out and made sure it was on even byte boundaries. And then they did the whole sequence in like 4 seconds. It was literally 5 times faster. Not 5% or 10%, 500% faster. So it makes a huge difference. And this one, it's 2 minutes. And Dave Chesek, the author of this video here, was just kind of showing off. Well, it's showing off NitroSign, so of course I have to play it. But it's just 2 minutes. It actually shows him logging in using KBCom, which is a terminal program. And you'll notice in his multi-pack there on the screen, he's got 2 modem packs in there. Both of those have been upgraded to RS-232 packs, so they're full 19.2 instead of 300 baud modem packs. But he actually uses KBCom, which is a VT100 emulator under OS 9, kind of like VTerm is on RS-DOS, and logs into the web through remotely going through links, which is something I used to do back in the day all the time too. And he kind of shows some of the multitasking stuff here. So I thought it's a good promo, so I'll play it.
Hi, Dave Chesek here. Someone on Discord had asked why 2 DC modem packs. What use is that on a CoCo? Well, I just wanted to show that you can actually use 2 DC modem packs, which I've converted to Wi-Fi packs, on a CoCo. Here I'm running Ease of Use under Nitrous 09. And this is Kevin Darling's demo of the bouncing ball. But you can see here I have a DC modem pack that's configured as an RS-232 pack and a DC modem pack that I left as a DC modem pack. They are both connected to Wi-Fi, and I have a CoCo SDC. Again, this is a 2 meg CoCo. So I'm going to hit clear here, and you could see that I'm running G Shell. And I'm going to hit clear. So here I'm surfing the internet connected to a BBS that hosts Lynx web browser. It's a text web browser if you're not familiar with that. So I can actually surf the internet with this. And I'm connected at 9600 baud using KBCom on the CoCo. So I'm going to hit the clear key again, and here I'm connected to my Raspberry Pi using KBCom to URSI. Well, actually I'm running URSI, which is a chat client on the Raspberry Pi, which I've logged into from the CoCo. So again, these are not native applications, KBCom is, but connecting to other computers, you can actually surf the web and you can actually do IRC chat. At the same time, under Nitrous 9. So I thought that was pretty cool. Just wanted to show it here really quickly and let me know what you think. Thank you. Bye.
I kind of wish that I'd had his demo at the show instead of mine. This is a lot better than mine was. But that's something we used to do at work all the time. KBCom is a program we used a lot for logging into link-based stuff. I used to go through the freenet. And KBCom actually has one of the best buffering systems I've ever seen on the CoCo for handling high speed without losing data. He did it really smart. That was Eddie Kuntz? Or, yeah, I think it was Eddie Kuntz that wrote it. But he did a masterful. It's triple buffered, and he has an explanation, the documentation of it. I also supported the graphic text modes, like we ran on a graphic screen. So we had some alternative fonts that actually would display characters that Gimme normally can't do, and it would keep up under our machine at work. It actually kept up in 9600 baud even on a 2-color graphic screen, so you can get all this extra font stuff like copyright symbols and trademark symbols and extra European characters that the normal Gimme font doesn't handle. So. But yeah, I thought it was kind of nice that he actually sent me a link to this morning, so I threw that in there. Sorry, was somebody saying something?
I was just saying it was by far the nicest terminal program that the CoCo had. As far as appearance, KBCom was it. Yeah.
The only one that rivaled, I think, was V-Term by Tim Cancel, because that was an RS-DOS one, but he actually supported like the double high and double wide VT100 characters. So that was one thing.
But this was OS 9, man. This was a real.
Well, exactly. Yeah. He's running 2 at once on 2 different connections. You can't do that under V-Term. So I thought it was a pretty cool demo. That's my last news. So I'm just going to quickly check the chat, because some people were asking some questions and making some comments. So Norlander651 was asking, have there been any updates on the Gimme X, which I responded to. So Gary Becker, right before the fest, like literally a week before, did a firmware update, which added programmable character sets for the Gimme and the VDG mode. So you can actually take the text character set, change a single character at a time, or re-upload the whole thing and make your own. So if you want to do some custom games, then it becomes Gimme hardware, which means you only have a 2K screen to move around, which means you can do some wicked stuff on that. I haven't had a chance to fiddle with it too much yet, but I think Nick and I were going through the latest specs, and I kind of forgot about that. So I have to get that installed. Pedro in the chat says, with a Gimme X and a new board, the only new old stock you would need is a CPU, but those are actually still made, albeit very expensive. So I think we caught up with chat. And I know Grant Leedy has joined us here. Did you have an update or something? You're just joining for fun?
No, well, I have one thing I'll just talk about here real quick. I will be sending out a survey for the last CoCo Fest later this weekend. So we'll be getting some more information from everybody, see what you guys liked, what you guys didn't like, what improvements we can make. So be looking for that in your email boxes or also the website. So if you didn't attend, you can still put your 2 cents in. But Curtis, we don't want to hear from you.
Is there an option to ask you to resign?
Sure.
You deserve that. You did an excellent job. I appreciate everything.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So that's the only update I have on my end. So.
Okay. Cool. And since that's the end of the news here, does anybody have any project updates or acquisitions they would like to talk about? We kind of asked the pre-show, and didn't like there was too much, but if anybody wants to do a quick one, go ahead.
No, I think we should take a minute, though, to say farewell to our old friend who recently passed. I don't know if I can get my face spotlighted here, but he's gone.
Good riddance as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it was a sucky browser, but I'll be honest, I have a bit of a nostalgic tie to it.
Hey, you had to download something else with it. You had to have something.
Well, not that. When I was doing the animated GIFs in Vue, the 609 version of Vue back in the late 90s, the IE animated logo with the spinning globe and the E was one of the test ones I used, because that was one of the first ones I hit that wasn't an entire animated GIF that stays the same size. It draws the full background, it says Internet Explorer, and then it would just animate that little corner and only compress the data for that corner. It wouldn't redraw the rest of it. And that was something that broke my original version of it. So this was actually one of my test beds to make sure it worked. In fact, while you guys are kind of going through some other updates here, maybe I'll fire up BCC and I can actually show you that in action, because I was quite chuffed when I actually got that to friggin' work finally.
As soon as like an alternative came out, like Firefox and so on, I jumped over to that and used that for years.
The problem was every corporate software for 10 years was written for IE6.
Yes.
And then even if it was all the way to the bitter end, the IE6 stuff still had to run on whatever Explorer was doing. So it was just, oh my God.
Fred, did you have any update on Control Panel? How that's coming along? You kind of mentioned a bit.
I could show some of the most recent changes I've made. Problem is, the PC that I'm using to run the Zoom meeting, or not run it, but is on a different PC than my most recent update of Control. So I would need to jump out of the meeting and then jump back in order to demo what I've done recently, which is, a few, neat changes, but I don't know if we want to go through the hassle of me leaving the meeting and jumping back in. I don't know.
Maybe next week or the week after.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the improvements.
Or we could do a quick commercial break and I come back and I'll be ready to go, I think, but I don't know. Whatever.
Does anybody else have any updates or acquisitions that we talked about? I know, Ken, you had an acquisition recently, but it wasn't CoCo related, but.
Yeah, that's not here though. That's back in Vancouver.
That was your iMac G5, I believe?
Yep.
Which should be able to run the old Mac CoCo emulator. I just tied it into the CoCo that way.
I'm going to try real quick to jump out and jump back in. Be back.
Okay.
And it could warm the cabin.
Well, hey, Rick, any updates from you on stuff, or Nick Morenti's updates on your game? Just to give a quick, you don't have to show anything, but if you want to just mention.
No, I haven't. I haven't really done much work on it this week at all. So.
Well, yeah, you were doing other computer stuff too. You're working on your Amiga, weren't you?
Yeah, I've been playing Amiga this week. Yeah, I bought the new operating system for the Amiga, the 3.2, and I've just been playing with that. But I'm finished now. I'm going to be starting back on the CoCo for next week.
So has Amiga OS caught up to Nitrous 9 yet?
Never.
Yeah, well,
I just said that because Frank was in the chat room earlier. Who's Retro
Most
Rewind. And of course,
importantly, on the Amiga, how does the trash can look?
Yeah, exactly.
I actually turn off the trash can on my Amiga, but yeah, it does have one. So, I must admit though, I do like the Nitrous 9 one better.
It's because he never
Probably
makes
because
mistakes,
I made
so
it.
he doesn't need it.
Well, you can customize the trash can on the Amiga, but
You can. That's right. Yeah. So, but I did the one for Nitrous 9. So yeah, that's my bias.
Yeah, and I mean, I can patch that too. I mean, you can use Mod Patch to patch it yourself if you want. It's embedded in the G Shell code. It's just a whatever size icon it is.
Yeah. No.
All right, I'm back.
Rick Euland, any updates on you? Have you either on the hardware or the software side?
I'm doing everything else this week. I'm getting caught up on backstock and soldering, and everything else. So next week I can play with my CoCo again.
So does that mean that any back orders you've had, you're catching up on all those? Is that what's basically happening?
I've got the back orders done. I'm building stuff so I can actually stock again because everything's at 0 now, pretty much. Except for stupid things like writing down 24 megahertz when I needed 25 megahertz. I'm pretty much caught up again. So yeah, a few more parts and then I can go back to playing with my software because a lot of exciting things happened and I kind of jumped ahead of myself and messed up the code a little bit. So I just need to step back, start from sanity, and put my desk back in. Rather
The
than
good news is business is good, and the bad news is business is good.
Business is good, exactly. So next week.
Okay. So before we get to Fred, does anybody else have a project update or acquisition they want to talk about?
I had something, but is that separate or later? Or?
Oh yeah, we're going to do your little questionnaire. Yeah, we'll do that after the this segment. We'll actually do a dedicated Ron's Garage segment for that.
All right.
We have an intro for that.
Yeah.
I'm finishing up the conversion of Arcade Game Designer engine for the MC10. Just working on it now. I've still got to do the compiler part, some of it, but
what are the system requirements for that, James?
Well, the problem isn't the system requirements for the engine, it's the system requirements for each game. So the engine plus the game isn't going to be able to exceed like 20K.
How big is the engine on its own?
Oh, geez, I haven't looked at the moment. The MC10 version is a lot smaller than the 6502 version, though. I know that. It's, let's see, the file's like, the assembly is like 9,000 for the engine, 9,000 lines of code. So it's probably under 10K.
Okay, so some of the smaller games might work okay then.
Yeah, it's just when you get a lot of rooms, it's going to be, it's just not going to be able to do it. That's one of the biggest problems with the MC10 is they have a really bad memory map.
Now, would having an MCX 32 SD or the MCX 128 help?
Well, it would, and it's probably going to be necessary because all the games are currently written for high-res screen, and you got to turn off the ROM in order to change the interrupt vectors, because those normally go right into the screen memory. So it's going to have something. I haven't decided what I'm going to do. The 128, and I haven't looked if it and the MCX 32 or use the same hardware to turn that off and replace the ROM with RAM or not.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even know you were working on that. So it's pretty good because, I mean, the MC10, like we've mentioned before, has been having a resurgence of machine language games coming out. There's Greg Dion's compiler that Jim Gary uses. All the stuff
code
from
is
Japan and stuff, and now you're actually adding AGD to the mix. That's awesome.
Well, the code is significantly smaller than even the 6809 version, because the way they implement it, since the original code was for the Z80, they have virtual registers on the 6502. It's on the page 0, which is its version of the direct page, and then the same thing for the 6809. But they didn't. On the 6809 version, they still treat those as little endians. So it's load A and load B and add and stuff like that. There's no 16-bit code. So the 6809 version could be sped up a whole lot if it were switched to big endian. And I went to the trouble of doing that. And it's like the code I'm looking at right now for finding a sprite is literally half the size of, I think it's half the size of the 6502 version. And some of the stuff is really inefficient on that. I'm porting from the 6502 because it's easier than going from the 6809.
Yeah, I would agree. That direction is way harder.
Well, the compiler part, the code I've done so far is based on the 6809 code, but they load Y and they load X. And I have to have X all the time. And so I got to see what type of code's generated. And so I'm probably going to have to go back to the 6502 to get a few things. But once I get this assembled and up and running, or at least get the engine assembled, I've got to, figure that compiler part out and building the whole beast. But it should be easy to port stuff. If you got code to a game, as long as it'll fit in RAM, it should be able to work. I might have to come up with a loader system though for the MC10 to turn off the ROM or something and load code into higher RAM or something if we're going to have any larger games. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that, or if I'll just leave it to smaller games. It does support the lower resolution graphics, the 4-color with the square pixels. So if someone wants to develop a game from scratch, it'll let them do a platformer in that mode.
Okay. I know, James, normally your internet's not probably good enough to do a live video share type thing, but if you get to the point where it's actually working and you got some sample games to show, if you can record a video,
I'll be able to.
I'll definitely play it.
I'll try to get out some of the demos up and going, because they're just like a single screen and showing you testing, jumping, and stuff like that. And I can do some videos of stuff like that. And that the big thing is, you're going to need the high res mod on the first stuff, because everything is written for that in those games, because that's 256 by 192 is what mode all those games use.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of it's great that I'm working on this, but how many people have that mod? You'll play it on an emulator, but anyway.
Yeah. Still be cool to show, though. I might actually encourage some more people to do the mod if there's a lot of software coming out for it. So chicken and egg type thing.
Yeah. And you can take existing games, and if you were to adapt them, I suppose there'd be a way to change the vertical position of sprites and things like that, all the boundary checking and stuff from some of the platformers. It could probably be automated, but I don't have high hopes for that.
Oh, yeah, well, definitely keep us posted, though, because if you do have some demos, I'd love to show them on the show. So.
Yep.
Hey, Fred, I think you're probably ready by now.
Yeah, I'm all set. So I got to say that progress has been a bit slow. I've been encountering a whole series of hardware problems with my CoCos lately. 2 of my 3 CoCos are dead. I think there's bad memory or something. My SDC cartridge doesn't work anymore. I'm having trouble connecting with drive wires, so I've had a lot of challenges. But anyway, there are some updates to control that I'd like to show off a little bit, show people how it's coming along. So let's see. Can I share my screen?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. 1 second. Screen. There we go. Okay. You all see that?
Yeah.
All right. So here's G Shell, and so of course to start up control panel, you go into the Tandy menu in the upper left, click control, and boom, here we go. And
I see you're overclocked a bit, eh?
Yes. Just thought I'd speed things up a little bit for the sake of, I don't know, convenience and demonstration purposes. Anyway, so let's see. I showed you most of the stuff, but you notice there's this new menu in the upper right called Info. Okay, so there's 2 choices: About, and you come up with this little About blurb, giving credits and so on. So that's new. Then let's see. There's also Help. So I added some help screens to control, and so when you click on Help, it shows a help screen for the particular tab that you happen to be in. Okay, so like if you click on Keyboard, for example, and you click on Info, then a help screen for keyboard comes up, or you jump over to System and you click on Info, and you get info about that tab. So that's something I've added. Let's see what else. I changed. Let's see. Those were, I guess, the major things. I changed a couple of other things that are like not so obvious, like the file menu. I've changed some things around in there. Another change I'm going to be making soon is when you select quit, These three choices come up: save, quit, and cancel. I'm thinking of changing that to like save, abandon, cancel. And abandon does slightly different things than quit. Basically, of all these settings that you can control in control panel, some of them update immediately. Like when you click on CMP or RGB or monochrome, those changes affect the whole system instantly. And then there are some other changes that don't take effect until you close out of control. Okay, and that's
like mouse, like high-res mouse.
Like high-res mouse, exactly. Yes, or left or right mouse port. Okay, so and then there are other changes that you have to either restart G Shell or reboot the system in order for the changes to take effect. And so I'm thinking of changing like the options under quit. It might ask you if you want to change or not change the system settings to affect the system immediately, or whether you want to not change them upon leaving control and just have it change when you reboot or something like that. I haven't totally figured that out yet. There's still a few bugs that I have to work out. Like, for example, there's one bug I just haven't been able to figure out how to fix. When you go into display and say you click on one of these palette slots, boom. That's kind of a big one. It's weird because I never noticed that bug before until recently. It was kind of weird. So there's still a few bugs lurking around that I still haven't squashed, and there are some that I may not have even found yet. So, but it's, for the most part, it's looking pretty good. Yeah. So that's about all I have actually for now.
Cool. No, I like some of those, like the help features, especially. Obviously, you'll adapt it in a pause or something, so you can actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have a pause built in, but I think I need to lengthen it or something.
Or make it clickable type thing or something.
Fiddle with that a little bit. Yeah, you're right. I need to.
I mean, if you do an overlay window, if you do it as a framed one with scroll bars, you could actually have it so you can scroll up and down within the help too.
There's an idea. Yeah, I like that. Okay, I'll look into that.
Yeah, that's fairly easy. There's an insert line and delete line control code that you can actually shift the screen automatically.
Yeah, I think I know how I can do that. Yeah. All right. Cool. Good idea. Thank you.
I don't know.
Okay. I got one thing to show quickly, and just what I mentioned, then we'll go into Ron. So I'll just do this quick, and then we'll let Ron do Ron's garage segment. You got the intro queued up there, Mark?
Somewhere.
You guys seeing my VCC screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Hey, so this is the special version of Vue I did for the 639 back in 97 through 2000 that supported animated GIFs, and we were talking about IE dying. And oops, I think I spelled animated wrong. I just noticed. So that's the actual rendering. Now it's doing the smooth animation where you can actually vary the speed, etc.
Yeah, can you anti-alias or does it anti-alias at all? Or
well, it's already dithering the crap out of it.
Oh, is it?
That's a 256 color image. It's trying to render in 16. But that was the one where, like I said, it draws the initial frame of the GIF, whatever, is the entire rectangle, and then every subsequent frame is just the little rotating E world thing, and I had to figure out how to do that in the code so that it wouldn't, when I first tried it, it was drawing it on the left side, so it would put it over top the text instead of where it's supposed to be. So I had to figure out how offsets worked and all this other thing. And that's that's some palette animation there too. So
is something similar to that going to be tried in animating like mouse cursors?
Well, I mean, you could. It's just switching between get put buffers. The main thing I had to do is get the Lemple-Zev
slow things down a bit.
Stuff working to decode, which I 609 optimized, and then I lost the source code, so I have to regenerate all that again.
Very
All right,
nice.
just because of IE dying, I thought I'd show you. That was actually a test bed. So I have a little bit of a positive connection with IE only for that.
Okay, take it away, Ron. And you're muted.
My
And
wife,
start.
my wife opened the garage door and it changes my colors. So it doesn't matter. Let's go share the screen. I think it's this one. Let me know when I got it up.
It's up.
Up, good, okay. Hey, I was watching a movie called Spiderhead on Netflix, and I saw a game in it. Now, I don't know if I should play the video because it's, it's the 39-second clip of the video. I think it'll be okay.
Maybe.
Well, here goes. So in this video, I was watching, and then all of a sudden this guy goes to a game machine and starts playing this game. Does it look familiar?
Yeah.
Does it? Yeah, and it comes back on again. It looks like
So do we get to see the CoCo 3 hidden under the table, or?
I don't know. It's just the screen, and it's coming up right about. Well, he's on it. See it? So this is basically what he saw. Can you tell? Does it look like anything?
Not quite the arcade.
Joust, not
Joust. Yeah.
Vegas. Yeah, Joust. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
Unless
so I
you're
saw that
turning
and I got all
main.
excited and I said, it looks familiar. And then Steve Batson says he thought it was buzzard bait for the CoCo, but it doesn't look exactly the same.
No.
All right. So got all excited for nothing, but it was interesting to see. And let's see some of the stuff I've done. This is a picture of a frame grab from a video my dad did. It's going to be Father's Day Sunday. And he played, he did a video 19 days before he passed. And I put that on the color computer. Sentimental for me only. And this is a Plymouth van I did on high color. And then this guy here, Wayne Aaron, he always follows me. So I took his picture and I put it on the CoCo for him. Thought that would be cool for him. And while I'm doing WeFax, everybody can take a drink. I noticed my water bottle turned nuclear green while I was had it by my CoCo. Thought I'd take a picture of it and it came out. So I thought that was interesting. And I did some challengers. Anyways, on another area, I posted this. Let's just say for discussion that the Tandy Color computer was never released. How would that change the computing universe? I think that there would be a shift negatively from all of the people who would not have had a life of computer tech. They would have to get the same inspiration from other computers like the TRS-80 model 1 through 3 or some other company, which means no CoCo, no big deal. What do you guys think? And I got 69 comments, which is pretty awesome. So I'm not going to read them all. I'm not even going to read one. If you ever get a chance to take a look at the comments, they're pretty interesting. There's some are in a thread and some just pop in and say things, and it's really interesting on how some people comment that the CoCo, made their life plan for them. They became a tech because of it.
Yeah, it
And I
started
thought
their careers.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. So that's pretty much it. That's Ron's garage for right now. That's actually a picture of my CoCo Pi. And it looks like it's running an SDC, but it's actually that Sidekick program. So it's not, it's everything here is fake that you're seeing. It's not a CoCo. It's not a, it's not a screen. That's it.
Got a comment from Rocky Hill. He says, I would probably be a struggling artist if the CoCo had never existed. And then he added, struggling because I have no talent.
I've heard from a lot of people on other computers that whatever computer they had is how they got started in IT. So I kind of think it would have had less of an impact than we think it would, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Like, I didn't have time to respond to it. I actually had busy with work this week, but my personal feeling is it would have made a slight change because, I mean, and we talked about this before, where the CoCo community tended to have a bit more of the hardware and software hackers proportionally in their populations versus some of the other more common machines.
Well,
like C64,
you also had that on the Apple II. And
yeah,
you had less so on like the Spectrum and stuff like that over in the UK, but still, there's a huge number of people in IT in Europe that got started on the Spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I mean, people that got started on the CoCo would have gotten used to multitasking probably a bit earlier than most people did. So maybe that might have made a subtle change. I don't know.
Well, and the CoCo, you had to do everything, which I think was its advantage, where the Commodore, you could lean on the sound chip and you couldn't really do graphics because it was all magic pokes anyway. So, but the CoCo was kind of a monolithic. You had, Microsoft Basic from the Basic through Extended through the disk drive, and it was all consistent, and you could develop a skill from that you might not do with like a C64 where you can play games great, but writing for it's really hard.
Well, it goes like you said that back at the beginning, Curtis. It's hard to say. I mean, who knows what the effects would have been, because I mean, one person can change the whole industry, and if it didn't exist, I mean, who knows what people would have been affected, how. It's kind of hard to say, really.
We would have found something else. I mean, there was heaps of computers back in the day. We just would have planted ourselves on something else, whatever was available at the time.
It would have been a subtle effect, but it would have had a little bit of an effect, I think.
If the CoCo didn't exist, we wouldn't have known about it anyway. So it wouldn't have changed anything. We just would have taken a different direction.
Yeah, because there would have been no Dragon. There would have been no windowing system for OS 9.2. It would have been all like gimmicks, terminals, and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, but there was so many computers back in the day. We would have landed on something, whatever was around at the time.
Honestly, if there was no CoCo, what would we do with our Saturday afternoons now?
We'd be playing Commodore 64s.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have learned programming, Nick, and you wouldn't have done any of that stuff. So you wouldn't have so many fancy cars.
Oh, but there were other computers that had good basics. I mean,
BBC Micro had a really good one.
Yeah, there were some others that, in England there was the BBCs and all that, and we probably would have went more PC, really. Tandy 1000 maybe.
Basically, the color computer was just not that big of a deal.
No, it was. But if it didn't exist, how can you say that it changed my life if you didn't have it in the first place? I think you've got to have it then to be able to miss it. If there was, I had a Model 1 before the CoCo. I was a Model 1 person. I just jumped across to the CoCo, which I almost didn't do because I didn't like the CoCo 1 and 2 back in the day. I probably would have gone. I think at the time I was looking at not what they call it, the MSX machines. was the one I was looking at mainly back in the day, but I went, because I was a Tandy guy before, I just went Tandy again. Then the CoCo 3 came out, and then I fell in love.
Well, is there one person that was CoCo related that made any difference in the world? I mean, in the computing
One
world.
person.
Yeah, just like that Scott.
There are bound to be a lot.
Well, you're assuming that they wouldn't have done something that they might have done anyway if they had a different machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to. I mean, you could name somebody like the guy that did CoCoMax, who later went to make the video toaster for the Amiga and a whole bunch of other things since.
Okay.
Well, actually, yeah, the Amiga is one thing I probably would have fallen onto, which I did. I do have the Amigas, and I did play around with the Amigas, but I already fell in love with the CoCo back then, so it was too late.
Again, I think it's impossible to say how the industry would have changed. For me, in my life personally, I think it had a big impact on my life. If it wasn't for the CoCo, what would have I gravitated towards instead? The Commodore 64, maybe I would have gotten the C64. I would have played around with it, but the basic for it was terrible. And I think I wouldn't have found a love for programming like I did on the CoCo if I had had a C64 instead. Later on, the Amiga was an awesome computer, but I think it was a bit outside my price range. I don't think I would have been able to afford an Amiga. And so I don't know where I would have landed. Regardless, my life would have been, I think, at least my life with computers would have been very, very different.
And actually, as Chris Duras points out in the comments, that his grandparents trusted Radio Shack, so they bought him a computer. And I know that's very similar to me too.
Yeah.
Well, who would have got?
I probably wouldn't have.
A lot of people wouldn't have gotten a VIC 20 that was at Walmart or Toys R Us.
I never would have, like, being able to go into the physical store that sold just those computers rather than ordering from the Sears catalog for a Commodore 64 or a VIC 20. My parents probably wouldn't have done that for me. They would have, but they did buy me my computer at Radio Shack because the store was right there. We visited every week.
My dad got me my first computer, and that's exactly why he chose the color computer for when he got me a computer. It was because Radio Shack stores were everywhere. It had a whole chain of stores that would support it, and he thought that was a big strength, was that network of stores. So
getting a CoCo was a kind of a stretch financially for my family. So I don't see them buying an Apple II. It would have, the only thing I think that was competitive price-wise at the time was either the VIC 20 or the TI 99, and we all know the TI 99.
Timex 1000.
Oh yeah. I'd have quit programming right there. Maybe that would have been for the best. I don't know.
I think it's safe to say.
I wonder.
I think it's safe to say that the availability of Radio Shacks and the Radio Shack computers, and the price let a lot of people
influence the decision.
It influenced the decision, and it let people have them that might not have found a career in computers if they wouldn't have had the decision. I mean, I saw the Apple II Plus at school. I knew that's what I wanted. I liked the way it worked. I worked all summer. I was only able to afford half of one, and so a friend and I went halvesies, and so we got an Apple IIe. But I'm abnormal in that way. But I just
I might have bought an Apple myself, but then I wouldn't have bought like a motorcycle or something. So
yeah, exactly.
I think it's not so much.
Where would the fun in that be?
Go ahead, Nick.
I think it's not so much if the CoCo didn't happen. I think it's more if Radio Shack didn't happen. More because I got to the CoCo via my Model 1 because I got into Tandy, which was down the street from where I lived. So I got the exposure to computers in the first place by the local Radio Shack store. If Radio Shack didn't exist, that would have changed things for me.
Yeah, actually, I was going to expand on that too, because one big thing about Radio Shack is that they had rural stores, small towns, that would never see a
Yeah.
Sears, would never see a Walmart. If you
That's
lived in
right,
Middle
they're-
Montana, the
Availability.
only thing you had was Radio Shack. So
Yeah,
that
we
I think
didn't-
had a huge
Availability.
I mean,
influence.
we had
Kmart was an hour and a half drive away for me. That was even Kmart. Walmart didn't exist around here.
that was the same for us for Sears or the Bay or anything like
Or
that
Eaton's
that
or
carried
whatever.
computers. We had order counters in town where you could order out of a catalog, or you could go to the Radio Shack store.
And because Radio Shack had all the,
The
electronic
closest-
stuff too, that people could build their
Yeah.
own projects, I think that also lent why CoCo and Tier City people tended to be more hardware oriented than anything except maybe the Apple II. Everything else is kind of like prepackaged, and some diehards might have, done their own hardware, but there was a lot more of that in the CoCo community and the Apple community than there ever was.
Radio
anywhere else.
Shack contributed to all the problems I have.
Yeah.
Well, I might have, if I hadn't have gone with a color computer, I might have bought one of these kit computers and built, and who knows what I'd have ended up with.
Well, one other thought. When I was growing up, during the summertime, we would go visit my grandparents in a little town in upstate New York called Ticonderoga, right? Like 2,000 people. And they had a Radio Shack store back in the 80s. And I remember going into that Radio Shack store at one point, and there was a CoCo 3 in that Radio Shack store in this tiny little town in upstate New York. So yeah, the vast network of stores, I think, did expose a lot of people to computers that otherwise wouldn't have. I mean, there was no
Availability.
Sears. There was no Sears in Ticonderoga. There was no, there was no other department stores or anything where you could get a computer. That was like pretty much the only place, and for like at least a couple hours drive around. So yeah, I think Radio Shack had a big impact, and by extension, that helped the CoCo, I think, to have a bit of an impact. But exactly what kind of impact, it's just hard to say, really.
Well, there's also the fact that I'm old. I'm 68, and when I first got interested in computers, I would go to Radio Shack and look at the Model 1 and type on the machine there. I couldn't buy one, but I was real interested in wanting to play programs and how they loaded, and I learned all that before I ever got a computer. But I think a lot of the guys in our group here probably have had the color computer when they were teenagers, and me, I was already older, so that may be a little different. Like
I
with,
can say,
Nick,
I can say one thing about influence that I had that I wouldn't have if I hadn't got a CoCo. I wrote a demo for the local Radio Shack for the CoCo, and it was showed off at County Fair. They had a booth, and the guy that from Radio Shack, I ran into him years later, and they said they sold a ton of CoCos because of that. So that's one thing that would have changed. I don't know.
Yeah, the other thing I think too is the fact that Radio Shack had, not everybody that worked there was like this, but they usually at least had a passing knowledge of computers and electronics. Otherwise, they wouldn't be working at Radio Shack in the first place. So you actually got a little bit of technical support at most of them. Just if you had a question, they would know or know where to look anyway. Whereas opposed, if you're buying at a Kmart or Walmart, they have absolutely no idea what a computer does. So you would not get that tech support. So I think that also helped encourage.
Absolutely. I mean, Commodores were sold alongside toasters and microwave ovens at Sears and stuff. And it's like, I can't possibly imagine my father, who was pretty technically savvy. He worked with computers. I can't see him going into a Sears and buying a Commodore for me from somebody who sold them alongside, microwave ovens. It just wouldn't have happened. And so it would have greatly delayed my exposure to computers when I was a kid.
Well,
I think we're looking at it wrong. I think we're looking at it wrong. It was the free battery cards that did it. We all
they better give me a lot of batteries for that purchase.
That's what exposed us to Radio Shack. Let's admit it.
It didn't in my case. I didn't even do the battery card for about a year after I was going to Radio Shack. So
I don't know that I ever did that.
No, I didn't.
And to be honest, my CoCo was a mail order. They weren't supposed to be mail order, but there were people. It was a place out of Texas. I don't remember which one, but it was cheaper than the local Radio Shack. And
Computer
it was
Plus?
Maybe. It was the only way I could afford it.
Yeah, actually, my second CoCo, the CoCo 3 that I finally got when I was like when it was like 87, that one I ordered through Rainbow magazine advertiser. So, but the first one was from Radio Shack.
Yep. Chris Durst has an interesting comment. He said Radio Shack made small margins on the big ticket items, the parts on the wall and the add-ons, where the margins were at. Part of their downfall was forgetting that.
Right. I mean, I'd go give them $1 for a couple of resistors just because I needed them, and they made 80 cents on that.
Well, what are you going to do? Wait a week for mail order? Nobody had local supply places. It was Radio Shack.
You pay the premium because
huge markup on them things, and I'd go back again and again. And then when they turned into a phone store, you ain't gonna make any money selling phones.
So Apple and Commodore people bought at our
Yeah, parts they probably did.
Yeah.
Yeah, if any of us were running Radio Shack back then, it'd still be in business now, right?
Probably.
CoCo forever.
Well, there was a big waning of the do-it-yourselfer and the kit stuff, but that's kind of come back with the places like Adafruit and Spark Fun and the whole maker movement.
But that's all mail order now, Mark. Which I mean, with Amazon next day delivery actually works. But if that had been back then, it wouldn't have had the effect that Radio Shack did, being in every little town where you can immediately go get something.
My family, the only credit card they had was like a JCPenney or a Sears. They didn't have a MasterCard or a Visa or anything like that. So if I mail ordered anything, I had to mail a check.
Yeah, that's the way I did it back then too. Yeah.
And please
send a check in the mail.
Check is in the mail.
6 weeks. Yeah.
So I think the answer to Ron's thing, at least in general broad terms, is not so much that if the CoCo hadn't existed, it would have had a bit of a change, especially on us, obviously, but it wouldn't have been a huge major change in the world. But if Radio Shack had not existed, that would have been a major thing. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people got exposed to computer years earlier in rural areas that never would have for years afterwards.
Well, don't forget that Tandy was also one of the best-selling computers too before.
Yeah, the CoCo was a bestseller, so was the Tandy 1000. So
up until 1980, the Model 1 was like the top seller. It wasn't until the disk drive for the Apple II came out and some of their advertising campaigns that started after that it really took off in sales.
And I do remember John Roach
was later.
John Roach of Tandy actually said that the CoCo was the best seller after it was released up until the Tandy 1000 came out. So that spanned from 80 to 84, 85. The CoCo was their best seller.
Now, I vaguely remember an article in Rainbow where one of the Tandy guys was quoted as saying it was always their best seller, but I don't know. I'm sure that was up to that point, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know what year it was.
Well, one thing's cool is watching a lot of these guys do the Septandy stuff and have their first CoCo, and then they have to go look up the history of the CoCo, and they do their best to explain, what it has and how the memory works and so on. And that's kind of cool to watch since, we already know that stuff. And then seeing, newbies get into it.
It's been kind of fun. I mean, some of them have joined our community actively, like the Damien Taylor Show, for example, and 8 Bits in the Basement, and a bunch of others have actually kind of, officially joined the wider CoCo community, even though they may not have had one back in the day, or maybe they did, and they, sold it off in 85 or something, and then, they come back 30 years later, and it's still fun.
And one of the things that surprises them is that it turns on. First time. Yeah, this has been sitting in my attic for 30 years. And I turned it on and it went on.
It's old enough to still work. If it had been made 10 years later, it would have been in that capacitor
dead zone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, but I think when most people turn it on that aren't familiar with the CoCo, the first thought is, "Oh my God, is it supposed to be that green?"
Oh yeah.
The thing that got me when
I have heard
when I first got my color computer was I learned in the book how to find how much memory it had, and I did a question mark mem, and it was 22 something, and I'm thinking, well, isn't this 64K? And I'm thinking. Well,
I hear
really
that all the
doesn't-
time, even now.
It doesn't say anything in the book about how you find out how much memory you got, and you're sitting there thinking, well, I wonder how much is in there, you kind of just forgot about it after a while and just played with the thing, and just accept the fact that it must be in there.
I know when I first got my first 4K CoCo 1 in 1981 in the fall, I did the print mem thing too, but then it returns 2,343 bytes. And I'm going, I got ripped off here. I'm supposed to have 4,000. I didn't have no idea. Basic reserve.
I think that was my first thought too.
Yeah.
I remember doing the upgrade on my machine, and it's like, well, crap! I still don't have enough RAM.
Yeah. Well, I remember that was one of the early, the first attraction for me when I heard about OS 9 was the advertisers are like, take full advantage of your entire computer's memory, not just, half of it like you can in Disk Basic. And so I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool. I can utilize more of the computer's memory if I use OS 9. So I picked up OS 9 and yeah.
The Dibble books that you could buy that first introduced you, the one was white, and you go through and you do the examples to do directories and find out how much memory you have, and then learn how to move from the execution directories and all that stuff. And then after a while, it got to be to where you were a little bit proficient, and you thought to yourself, well, this is pretty darn cool. And then you start playing games and you do other stuff, and you don't think about OS 9 anymore. And then when you go back to it, it's like, oh my God, it's so complicated. So you don't go back to it. And that's what happened to me until, or at least when I did DeskMate a lot, I'm thinking to myself, gee, under this is all that stuff. When I first booted OS 9 from the floppies, that's all under there somewhere, But when you have a GUI or whatever, you're just using it. You don't know it exists.
And that's the reason we did the OU project, is because of Nick's whining for 20 years incessantly.
There you go.
I mean, yeah, I found OS 9 a lot more complicated and, perhaps sometimes difficult to learn. But what kept me engaged with OS 9, to me, it was so cool that you could have different windows and different screens and do multitasking. And I was like, whoa, that is way cool. So that kept me engaged was that ability.
Yeah, like in my case, I did use OS 9 level 1, but it wasn't that useful. It was okay if I had to list a book report to the printer, I could put an ampersand after it and it would print it out and I could do something else at the same time. That was cool. But that was about the only function. There was only one screen. So if you tried to run two programs, the next screen was, it just turned to a hodgepodge mess of two programs arguing over the screen type thing. So I didn't really do much with level 1. Level 2 at the windowing, that's what sold me on it. I stuck with it ever since, because that was like running a modern machine. In fact, in some ways, it was more advanced than some of the other machines out at the time.
Admittedly, I never used a level 1, and I went straight to level 2 once I got my CoCo 3. Yeah, level 2 blew me away with the windows and the multitasking. I was like, yeah, this is cool.
We had
I never did OS 9. I was they didn't have it at my local Radio Shack when I got out of high school in '83. What year did that come out?
Level 1 came out in the fall of '83.
Yeah, see, I'd have been in college, and I never went to a local Radio Shack store at that time. And then, I was dealing with a mainframe, mini computers, IBMs, stuff like that, Unix machines and things. So I kind of just leapfrogged past the OS 9 thing.
in '86, we had a computer fest in a mall, and our club was probably 80 people in it. And we had a good portion of them show up at the mall, and we had tables everywhere, and everybody brought their machines and set them up and for playing games. We had demos of the RAS scan, doing, you know, pictures of people walking by and stuff. And we had a couple of older Radio Shack machines, and some of them 100 set up because Radio Shack helped us. In fact, at one point, I had my machine was in the middle of a place. It was a CoCo 1 with a multi-pack setup in OS 9, and we had Radio Shack come by with a telephone and hook it to the CoCo, and we went on CompuServe in one window, and then we were printing out a document in another window, and in another window we had like Dynacalc or something up, and we were able to switch, you know, hitting the clear key. And some of the people that had other computers that were going through the mall would come by and look, and thought first of all, it was awesome that we had Radio Shack there, and then having the multitasking thing going on, you know, it just kind of blew people away, and we'd have a small crowd around the computer looking at it. I'll tell you the truth, I could have never set it up myself, but they did with my machine, which was really cool.
Yeah, we did that at one of our demos in the mall too, when we had a bunch of computer clubs get together with Atari ST and Amiga and TI, some Atari 8-bits, CoCos, Model 3s and 4s and stuff too. And it's the same thing. The multitasking was something that, you know, an 8-bit machine could do that. They were used to the Amiga and the ST doing it somewhat, but not something that old and that cheap.
Like my freshman year in college, I demonstrated to a friend of mine the CoCo's multitasking, you know, multi-windowing, and he looked at me. He was like, "Yeah, I don't see how multitasking could be that useful." And I was like, "What? you don't see any value in running two programs at once? I mean, come on! It's like, yeah, we do that all the time with computers nowadays, and we take it so much for granted." And he didn't see the value in it, but I recognized it right away. I was like, yeah, to be able to do two things at once is, at least two things at once is. Yeah, that was something that CoCo did and like hardly anybody else could do, and that just blew me away.
But it was interesting to compare with Windows 3.1, which attempted to do something similar, but not nearly so nicely.
Well, when Windows came out and they talked about multimedia, and then they had pictures of the space shuttle taken off in this little tiny screen. you would hit play or hit the button to make it go, and it would take off and then stutter as it's going up.
Yeah, it was cooperative multitasking.
We sold a lot of Amigas because of multitasking. We would have like Deluxe Paint, we would have a word processor and a spreadsheet, and we would just click on the different window and go back and forth and cut and paste back and forth, and people were so impressed. And then we would, then you'd get somebody to say, well, Windows can do that. And I said, oh yeah? And you put something to the back, some animation that's going, and then you're typing a document up front and you can see the window over the top of it. And they're like, whoa.
But I just remember, like in Windows, even up through Windows 95, 98 there, if you formatted a floppy which wasn't multi-threaded or even preemptive multitasking, the rest of the OS basically froze dead. Like we used to run printers and stuff. If you formatted a floppy because you wanted to copy something over to another machine, you would have to sit there and wait for it to finish before you could do anything else.
Well, everything was cooperative, so any bad program could just take over everything that you own at any time.
Yeah, and Multi-Finder in the Mac was the same way. Cooperative. The Amiga and the CoCo, actually the CoCo first, but those on level 1 in 83, and then the Amiga, 2 years later, basically, were the first really truly preemptive multitasking operating systems on home computers that I know of.
Right, so even no matter how bad it gets, the CoCo will still be crawling along in another window, and you can try to kill something.
Yeah, or you can set your priorities so that this one I don't really care if it takes an hour.
You didn't need a printer buffer or something. You could you could have something printing and then go and work on something else.
Yep.
That and people just they'd never heard of it.
Well, back then you could print a document and wait a while, and that was normal. It was normal to wait for a document. And then bidirectional was like, oh, twice as fast. It was cool to get a printer. I had a Panasonic printer that printed in color, which was pretty awesome. We had to buy the rainbow cartridge to stick in it. That was cool for a while.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember, did the Amiga OS support, what do they call them now? Multiple desktops, where it's like multiple screens, not multiple windows on a screen.
It had multiple windows on the main screen, and you could also have multiple screens, and you drag it down. You could just go up to the top and drag down the screen. You'd have the windows so that they didn't cover the main bar, and you could just drag it down and have something running behind it.
Okay. Was that in the first version of Amiga OS? I don't remember.
Yeah, it was, but the first version of the operating system was kind of buggy.
Speaking of that, I mean, I don't know much about the Amiga OS. Was it based on Unix, or what was it kind of based on? What was it similar to?
It was written fresh. Yeah, it was.
It wasn't really based on Unix, and it had
no.
It was what's his name? Carl Sassenrath, I believe was his name. Did most of the work.
Yeah, he did the Intuition. Metacombo. I think it's a British company.
Metacomco did the compiler.
The compiler, was it? Yeah.
Yeah. They originally used, I think, B or for the language, and then they ported it all to C later, and then a lot of it was optimized to assembly.
Was there ever an Tripos, wasn't it, originally?
What's that?
Tripos was the name of the OS that the Amiga one was originally called. Tripos. Well, it was based on something called Tripos.
I'd never heard that, but that's possible.
Yeah, Tripos, yeah.
I'll have to read up on that, because that sounds interesting to me, where Amiga OS came from.
What
it was similar to.
We were talking with Curtis the other day that Commodore, when they had the hardware all done and they needed an OS, they actually did consider OS 9.
Yep.
Because that was a multitasking OS.
That would have been sweet if they had adopted OS 9. I probably would have switched to an Amiga.
Yeah, the problem was, of course, there was no GUI environment back then for OS 9, so that sort of wasn't really what they wanted. They wanted a GUI, so they figured, oh well, let's just go to this other company and they'll create one for us.
So what was GEOS?
GEOS?
Yeah, GEOS.
That was for the C64, right?
Yeah,
GEOS. That was the Berkeley creation. That was that cooperative multitasking?
Was it a GUI?
I think it was multitasking. It
was. No, it was just a GUI. It was just a GUI.
Graphic Environment OS, I think, is what it stood for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Originally, the Commodore 64 was kind of the primary one. The Apple II had a version also, and I think they had one for IBM also.
Atari ST
and the Atari. And the Atari ST.
The Atari had its own gem.
That's
Gem
right.
desktop,
that's right. Gem.
It originated on the PC.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember the Amstrad PC, whatever, we sold some of them in our computer store as PCs. They were an 86 machine. They came with Gem desktop, and they supported more colors than the standard PC graphics card or something like that. And a lot of people loved it.
Yeah, I remember that Amstrad, yeah.
And there's your history lesson in OSs for today.
Yes. Well,
there you go.
Flex isn't in there anywhere, is it?
Good conversation. This has been great.
Let's say Flex isn't in there anywhere, is it?
Well, Flex wasn't multitasking. It added API calls to make it easier to write programs if you had to move between hardware. And it added subdirectories, which was a bit new for the time period it came out the early days. It's like,
was Flex for a 6800 originally?
Yes,
Flex was 6800.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it came out in the late 70s, like TSC and a few of the other versions.
So it was basically the 6800's version of a CPM type
kind
thing.
of, yeah.
Kinda, yeah. And it had as bad a memory map as the MC10.
Right.
IO was like right in the middle of the memory map.
Yeah. The big claim to fame there, like it had API calls to make, reading and writing disk files and stuff much more standardized than BASICs did. And it had subdirectory support, which predecessor to DOS did as well.
Did you say it also had dates?
Yeah, it did support real-time clocks if you had the proper hardware for it.
I mean, dates.
Oh, there we go. Real-time clock. Okay, yeah.
Do we get to vote for funkiest Motorola-based operating system? I vote StarKDOS, which ran on the 68,000, but didn't have a file allocation table. This sector was a linked list, so
was that
you
Peter
had no
Starks?
idea. Yes. So you had no idea how much room was left on the disk or what sectors had been used because there was no FAT. You had the starting sector of each file and it was linked list. So you had to chase each file to its end and add all that up.
I think
that sounds
the
crazy.
Amiga, the original OS, I think had something like that. And then they changed the file system later on.
The original file system we referred to as a lossy file system.
Yeah, that's right. They ditched it.
Another advantage of being older. Going through stuff like that. Layered operating systems.
Well, having a sense of the history and having a sense of what has progressed, like what was tried and didn't work, and kind of knowing so you don't repeat the same mistakes, I think that's very valuable.
Yeah.
And then we got Windows.
And that didn't work either.
Every once in a while.
Yeah,
So
it didn't work either.
That's it. The downfall of the world.
They're still trying to.
And if it wasn't bad enough, they came out with Windows ME. And I swore to never pay for another Windows after that again.
My Windows ME always worked well. I never had trouble with it.
It's funny because you can just tell ME they'd been working on Windows 95 all the way through 98 and all of its releases. And they still had a bunch of stuff sort of laying in the bin. So they just kind of swept it all into a box and called it Windows ME. And then
Well, they did
on XP after that.
They did throw the Windows 2000 GUI on Windows ME, but yeah.
yeah, which was Windows NT before that, which actually was a semi-decent operating system, even cross-platform, because that supported the DEC Alpha and PowerPC and Intel.
Spark.
Yeah, I used Windows 2000 for a long time because it was better than other versions of Windows out there.
It
Yeah.
was pretty stable. Yeah,
Well, OS 9 is still in production. No? Yes?
Yeah, I think Alan's still they're supporting it and they're doing updates. I don't know if they're selling it as a raw package these days. Maybe I haven't really talked to them lately. But
So that's one real good thing, isn't it? I mean, you can point to that and say, it's still here.
Well, yeah. So is OS 2. It's still supported.
Yeah, there's a version of OS 2 that came out. What was it called?
Arca. Arcanoa.
I think it's Arcanoa. Yeah, I was reading on a website about that recently. There's, yeah.
Some things are too good to die.
Well, and doesn't OS2 run on like half the CAS machines in the world?
Yeah,
it did. I think
Subway
most of those have been switched
And
over
the
now.
others come up with a prompt half the time saying your Windows is out of date.
Well, one thing I can
if it
say
doesn't
about-
blue screen first.
One thing I would say about Windows is back in the day when I was putting together machines, and selling them to people, to have a database of all the different hardware and have it work most of the time was pretty amazing, because there would be SCSI drives, there would be modems and all kinds of different brands of things that worked.
Well, that
was if it wasn't for the MC10 to hold up Windows, that would.
I always thought of it as good.
The secret was the clone architecture. So in Linux, you had a lot of problem with drivers because you had to write drivers for all of this hardware. Where in Windows, you had an architecture where Windows didn't. Your manufacturer's going to give you a driver's disk. That's all you need to know. And they didn't have to worry about it past that. And it took a long time to move from that model to what we've got now where things just work.
It was cool that Windows Update would actually go and find drivers, at one point.
I will tell you that when I was working on an application that had to access a modem and dial in directly to a company's server, that Windows wasn't, and the whole modem connecting and stuff, it was not really a science. Everybody had a different modem and everybody called in for tech support. It wasn't until they dialed into the internet that we didn't have to worry about that anymore.
I thought it was always fun to have different modem speeds as time went on. Went to 300, 1200, 9600, 14.4.
Yep.
28,
32,
56K.
Yeah.
I had a 33.6 that was supposed to be upgradable. It was a US Robotics. Yep. It's going to support the next standard. Oh, sorry, yours is too old. It doesn't support the next standard.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Somewhere on your modem, it would say, well, do you have the C or the D? And you would always
something like that.
Yeah, and it wouldn't. Yeah.
I was mad. Let me put it that way.
That was a good discussion topic to bring up, Ron, obviously, because we just spent an hour on it. But it's always fun to do the what ifs type thing. We do that all the time, like why did Tandy do that type thing, and what would have been different if they did it a different way. And this is actually broadening the scope of it, like not just to the CoCo as your original question was, but the fact that Tandy itself, like if Radio Shack had not existed, the world would be very different in the world of computers. I think there were a lot of people that feel like Bob Vanderpool and some other people that lived in rural areas and got into computers early would not have for years. So who knows? They might have decided to do something else by the time they got exposed to them. So we might have lost a lot of programmers, et cetera.
If it hadn't have been for people bragging about preemptive multitasking, we might have been on the cooperative multitasking a lot longer.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I whinged about Nitrous 9 and got it fixed.
Is there a forward somewhere or something in the docs for Nitrous 9 that might mention the reason EOU exists is because of certain screaming people?
Do I have it in the docs? I do have kind of a little bit of a history in there, I think. I haven't looked at it in a while. So there's a beginner's part of the docs that is meant for people that are new to it or, are really, rough on and haven't used it in years, kind of get them caught up as to what else changed. And then I have the, what's been updated this release type thing. But I think I have some of that. I might even mention Nick's whining in there. I can't remember.
So here's my CoCo multitasking comment here is my face now. So we've got a 115K serial port, an Ethernet port, a CoCo SDC, and as long as you stay away from the floppy controller, that's all good.
That looks well thought out, except for you don't have a door.
Oh, it's in Elgin somewhere in the dump.
Oh, gee.
I lost it at a CoCo Fest years ago.
Just think, in the next 10 years or so, we may have doors. Somebody may make them.
3D printed doors.
And then there'll only be about 4 CM8s alive to use.
Right.
Between Commodores and CM8s and there was one other brand. Somebody could make a killing on monitor doors.
That is true.
Well, is this steak done?
Yeah, I think we're done. That was a fun discussion, but I don't want to drag it out more than we already have.
We kind of beat the horse.
All right. Run the outro.
Oh, I think Curtis said he had a question for me. I thought
I did.
Oh, maybe you forgot. It's about an hour ago.
The question I had is if you had any updates on things, and you did give us that on.
Yeah. No, that was
the
it. Just
fest
a
survey
survey.
will be going up. Also, there was a
Curtis?
question in the chat here I was supposed to get to that I.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Oh yeah.
That was from who was that from?
Grant B asked about the software driver in OS 9, high res driver.
Right. So currently, no, it's not in there. We have the low res driver and the high res mouse interface driver, obviously, which is what we're showing in the control panel that Fred was demoing. The software mouse driver, I'm going to fiddle with it, but I've been kind of doing calculations on the amount of CPU time it takes because you have to shut interrupts off because of the precise timing, and you're oversampling. And if you run the high res driver right now, it slows the machine down noticeably, like 10, 20%. I'm scared that the multitasking is going to really go to pot doing that. I will try it, but I'm not holding as high hopes as I once did because it's literally a few thousand cycles you have to shut down just to sample the joystick or the mouse. But I'll give it a shot, but not until I finish some other stuff to get the version 1 release out.
And that reminds me, by the way, just I don't know if you guys covered this earlier before I came on. Grant B is now going to be doing the newsletter for the Glenside Color Computer Club. So
no, we didn't actually. I
Nice.
totally forgot about that.
So that was something that was announced last Thursday during the meeting. So congratulations to the other Grant.
I roomed with Grant B this last CoCo Fest, so I got to know him pretty well.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
He is. And he thought we were really great people too.
He doesn't know us.
He'll
well enough,
learn.
does
He'll
he?
learn.
Yep. You know,
Okay.
Curtis
He's
is the
great
jerk. Just
done
remember
right.
that.
Yeah. The
Great
polite
done
Canadian
right, is
jerk.
he?
That's who I am.
This concludes
Run the
another
outro, Frank.
episode of CoCoTALK, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy Color Computer, MC10, and Dragon systems. For all things CoCoTALK, visit us on the web at cocotalk.live. We'd love to hear from you. Send feedback, suggestions, even segments via email to cocotalk@cocotalk.live. Consider supporting the show with a purchase of merchandise from our retro swag shop at 8bit256.com. If you'd like to become a patron of the show, click on the Patreon link on our website, cocotalk.live. CoCoTALK would not exist without the community, its cast, crew, and contributors. Thanks go to Alan Murphy, Amigos Retro Gaming, Bill Noble, Brian Joyce, Brian Weaver, Curtis Boyle, D. Bruce Moore, Danny O'Connor, David Ladd, Eric Canales, George Jansen, Grant Leedy, James Diffendapper, Jason Reichert, Jim Brain, Ken Reichert, Ken Waters, Mark Bosley, Mark Overholzer, Mikey Furman, Mr. Dave 6309, Nick Marentes, Nick Marotta, Nick Marotta, Nick Marotta, Paul Fiscarelli, Richard Lorbieski, Rick Adams, Rick Hewlin, Rob Inman, Ron Delvaux, Samuel Gimes, Sloopy Malibu, Steve Bjork, Terry Steggy, Tom C,
Needs to update
and many,
this,
many more.
Closing credit.
Please help support the CoCo community. A list of various contributors and resources are available at imacoconut.com. That's IMACOCONUT.com. The original CoCoTALK theme song is copyright 2008 by D. Bruce Moore and Greg Sheeler. The new CoCoTALK theme song is copyright 2020 by D. Bruce Moore. Both are mixed, mastered, and produced by D. Bruce Moore. CoCo forever!
Oh, any last thoughts?
Stevie Straw. How's that for a last thought?
Who is he?
I don't know.
He's going to review this at some point. Hi, Steve.
I think the show's better without. I think the show's better without him. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Uh-oh.
Well, you know, he rage quits the show, so it's his own fault. He deserves it.
Yep.
No, I have nothing to add here, so we can.
Yeah, I did update the titles halfway through the show.
Cool.
So Cool.
We love you, Steve. We love you, Steve. I'm sure you'll be listening to this. So
Edit judiciously.
Fred's just trying to get on your good side.
I don't
always
want
a
him mad
favorite
at me.
child.
No, I don't want him mad at me.
Okay, well, say goodbye, everybody.
Bye. See you next week.
Bye, everybody.